who's introducing it? Okay.
Hello and welcome to episode 307 of the Crate and Crowbar. It is the 19th of December 2019 and this is our last podcast of the year. And as is traditional at this point, we've gathered in this, the extremely comfortable and carpeted and heavily padded hot take arena to discuss our games of the year. And you can tell that this is a comfortable and padded hot take and Platz by the fact, if you were watching this on YouTube, where we have filmed it, because we do that. Fuck this up a bit. My name's Chris Thurston, and joining me on this sofa are Alex Watcher.
Hello.
Marsh Davies.
That's me, hello.
Tom Francis.
Hello.
Oh.
Wow.
How rude.
And Philippa Moore.
Hi.
Hello, camera. We're going to forget you're there now, and just get on with talking normally.
It's like someone's watching us.
It is. Don't let
A lot
it...
of people are watching us, but later.
Don't let it affect you. So we're going to do this a little bit differently this year.
You're going to take the register.
Yeah. Alex?
Here.
Marsh?
Present, sir.
Tom?
Derby Hill, sir.
Okay.
Again, what's going on?
Actually, speaking of absent, we should send...
Right here.
I know.
It's terrible
The
what
ghost
happened to
of
Pip.
Christmas.
If only she could have made it.
Yeah. We obviously have apologies from Pip and Tom Senior.
I apologise for nothing.
I'll apologise for you.
Oh.
Wow.
There aren't enough.
Yes, it's sad that Tom couldn't be here.
It is sad that Tom couldn't be here. Sadly, taken ill at the last hurdle. Otherwise, we would have had the first ever, I think, 6-person video pod. With that in mind, we did make some changes to the format to make this a little bit more manageable. In previous years, we've drawn up a big list of pretty much every game in the year, and then attempted to remember how we felt about them, while getting increasingly pissed over the course of 3 hours.
It was a good system.
It was a good system. So we're changing it. It was so good that we have changed it to a system where we are going to, right at the top of the pod, nominate each of our 3 games of the year, and then we're going to discuss said games somewhat. And then at the end, we'll each round up with our favourites of the year. We may throw in some of the sort of honourable mentions as well, where they haven't been eclipsed by our prerogative.
And I think we're doing these in no particular order, right? These 3 for now. And then at the end, we can decide what our top pick is.
Yeah, this is a short long list, followed by an even shorter short list of one item.
So
Is everyone clear?
Barely even a list.
Is this the long list of the short or the short list
I
of the
feel like,
long?
Tom, the size of this pad has given me a kind of power that I shouldn't have.
If only you'd had a clipboard, you'd
Exactly.
be a true monster.
Normally a very small piece of notepaper, but this is massive. I'm very attached to it. Alex, would you like to introduce very briefly your 3 games of the year 2019?
Of this year, 2019,
Yeah.
my list in no particular order the list is the singular, the games are plural.
I don't
A lot of
remember
plural
that
games
one.
this year.
It was
Camera changes
weird.
nothing about this experience.
Sounds indie.
Outer Wilds. Not Worlds. No offence, but it's Wilds. We got Disco Elysium. And finally, Total Warhammer. Duh.
Interesting.
Total Warhammer. No, what is it? Total War Warhammer 2.
Indeed. So yeah, also for if anyone is surprised, game didn't have to come out in this year. Just talking about
Yeah, I'm
games,
talking
what we
about
enjoy.
like updates what done come out this year, and within this in my cases. But yes.
I might change my list.
Okay, we'll
I wasn't
discover that.
aware of this.
Mosh.
Sekiro, Stab Man Do Stabs, Disco Elysium as well, and a cheeky one, Red Dead Redemption 2.
How dare you?
Too mainstream, perhaps.
Yeah.
But it's my choice.
Okay. Pip?
Hello. Oh, I'm not here. So,
I thought about doing that joke for the 3rd time.
Does this mean we get to pick the games that Pip has to talk about?
Yeah.
Excellent. Was there a Tom Clancy themed card game this year?
Rainbow Six chops.
It can't be long till
Ghost
that
rummy.
No.
God, I think I picked. What did I pick? It was like 5 seconds ago that I told you. Hang on, I can do this.
I've got it here.
No, I'll tell you what I picked. I picked.
It's as if you knew this was coming to Chris.
Oh my god!
Look into your heart and see what is true.
Pick Sea of Thieves. Yes.
Sea of Thieves.
I know what you're saying.
That's right. That's the noise that all crabs make.
I mean,
Sound of the crab.
I don't think the noise is as big a clue as you. Okay.
Baba is you.
That's the one.
Oh,
Crabs is
and Heaven's Vault.
Excellent.
There we go.
Baba is you, crab is scream.
Crab is clam.
Yeah.
So sorry. That was a good cheap.
That seeming like the semiotic confusion was perfectly apt.
Crabba is you.
So.
Tom?
Mine were Outer Wilds, Disco Elysium, and Far Cry New Dawn. That's my main
Spicy.
choice.
There's going to be a theme emerging here, which is going to dramatically limit the number of games we need to talk about. My top three were Sekiro. You love to see it. Disco Elysium. And Outer Wilds.
You're the most central.
Yeah.
Dangerous.
I've had
Joe Swinson.
World's most laughable picks.
already lost my seat.
He's got his book, so
I've got my book. Where should we start in this, as Graham would love to say, smorgasbord of cold delights and cheeses? Should we begin with Crabba is you?
Yeah.
We can do, yeah. What would you like me to tell you?
Well,
Why is it good?
why is game good? Is game nice?
Game is good because game is fundamentally about pushing things around in a really simple way, and then it suddenly gets really conceptually confusing and interesting because if you don't know what the game is, I shall explain, because that's a useful thing to do at the top of a discussion. It is a block pushing game where you can also push around the commands that govern the rules of the little level that you're playing in. So Baba is you is the command that you might have in a level that says, it basically makes the player character the sheep, but you can change it to, you know, you is, or like, I don't know, cloud is you, and then suddenly you stop moving the sheep and you start moving a cloud or something. And there are various other rules that you change to make the interactions work to your favour and be able to reach whatever the level win condition is. Something is win is the other command that is important here. But,
I had a fun moment where I was pushing rules around, just trying stuff, and I moved the word wall into place to form the sentence, empty is wall. And as soon as I did that, every empty square on the level filled with wall. I could no longer move or undo that. Why did I think this would be helpful?
It's kind of nice just to see sometimes what the game thinks
Yeah.
a thing means.
And actually, you can undo. There's always you can
yeah.
always take your last move back.
yeah, the maker had some real struggling kind of things with about what empty would mean.
Yeah, that is.
I wrote about it like it was sort of, it could have meant the other way around. Like everything is now nothing's there anymore. Always empty, every empty space now filled with the thing you said.
Yeah, and there's other things that are like, they're more to do with you realise how they affect your character. Like, I think sometimes, you know, like, I think water is lava or water is hot or something means that you will burn if you come into contact with it, but you know, it's kind of that's the sort of thing that I found out by experimenting, because I was like, hot, okay, that's fine. Like, I'll just try and interact with hot. How hot? Oh. But yeah.
And I think the word melt is what gives you that vulnerability to hot things.
Oh, yeah.
And so you can actually make it so that lava is hot and lava is melt, and then lava melts itself out of existence.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I really sucked at this game.
Yeah, I was
too.
very bad at it.
Yeah.
You finished it, haven't you, Marty?
No, nowhere near.
Okay.
No,
Did any of us
grief,
finish it?
no.
No.
I think I came closest because I ended up reviewing it, and it was one of those ones where, like, I'm okay saying I didn't finish it for the review, but I saw absolutely the amazing ways that it worked. So,
did you get into like a meta world where you're pushing levels around?
I can't remember.
Oh yeah, there is that, isn't there?
Yeah.
I feel like
I didn't get to this myself, but I just saw it in a video.
I got really sidetracked by the extra levels that you can do. Like there's like extra bits that you can try and get to, and so I was super into like 100%ing that, and I was actually looking forward to sort of curling up with it over Christmas again, because it's very much one of those, you know, curl up with it like almost like it's a book or a set of Sudoku puzzles or something to just, you know.
Yeah, I really love the way you just sort of, you think, let's have a little go. I do feel a bit daunted because I remember being smashed in the face with it last time I played, and then half an hour goes and it feels good, and then you get smashed in, and then you go, okay, switch it off, and then you do refreshed when you start tinkering again.
Yeah.
One thing might be worth mentioning is that the developer did patch the game quite a lot after launch, because there's one level where I just got absolutely brutally stuck, and even after I looked up the solution, I could do it by following the steps, but I did not understand what was happening on screen. And the solution to that level is still the same, but they redesigned the level so that there was like 3 other red herrings that I was stuck on for ages trying to get those to work, and they just changed the levels so that those are obviously not an option. And so it just focuses it on like, okay, it's something about this. Somehow these 3 elements must interact in a way that gets me out of this brick box. And so that's kind of nice, because I feel like, I don't know this, but my instinct is that Steven's Sausage Roll was probably not updated in that kind of way to make it easier and more understandable to people. So it's kind of a different attitude.
I've been sort of vaguely in process of Steven's Sausage Roll since it's been released, and I haven't been quite willing to give up or admit that I've given up, even though it hasn't been installed for a good year at this point. I'm like, no, I'm still working on it. And then a week ago I buckled and just said, tell me what happens at the end, to someone I know who's completed it.
It sounds, I won't say anything about the specifics, but I read a summary of the plot and it's quite dark.
Oh yeah.
It's a pretty grim story.
You ever find out how the sausage is made, or?
Yes. Yeah, it's horrific. It's really when the
it's almost as if you wish you didn't know how the sausage is made.
But the only thing that I found really frustrating about it was talking about it in such glowing terms and having really loved it, and, you know, spending this time with it, and then you go to show someone a screenshot of it and then looking at like this sort of slightly muddy colour palette of indistinct shapes and quite sort of childlike font for the command lines and stuff, and you're kind of like, I promise you, this is so good.
Look, it's all written there. Look, can't you see what you do?
And it's like, is this a sheep or is this a rabbit? Or, and you're like, oh no! And that's like, and I find that art style really endearing.
Yeah, I
it was
like it a lot.
I really love it. That's no shade on the art style. It's more just that, like, that was the real stumbling block, was trying to get people into it. Like,
I think it's one of those games where you need to play it only for like 3 seconds in front of people, and suddenly as soon as they see the fact that you're changing the logic of the game, and then suddenly people, because I saw him, I forget the name of one of the dudes involved in it, present it.
Hempuli.
Harvey Tekkari.
That guy.
That sounds right.
I saw him present it at a couple of different GDCs, I think, and like to a crowd that wasn't familiar with the game at all, like he'd won them over almost instantaneously. They're like, oh, okay, it's a block pushing puzzle game, and then he just moves 2 words around, and everybody's like, oh my god!
Yeah.
So the opening is amazing. Like so when I wrote about it as one of my series about game design for Rabbit Shotgun, and I went back to the original demo version, this jam version that he developed during a jam. So he put together the entire game. Like, the entire concept for the game came out of like a 48-hour game jam. And even the first levels that ship with the game are pretty much the ones that he put together for the jam version.
Oh, wow.
And you play the band, and like, they teach you the sense of wonder you get from playing that tutorial, as it suddenly sort of goes bam, and you realise the power of what this game could possibly do. Like, and it was just 48 hours, and then it was like a year or 2 of just building out and then restructuring the entire way, because apparently, like, making the semantics of it flexible and actually function was quite hard.
I imagine it's the sort of thing that you're like, oh, brilliant, the bones of the game are in place, and then you have to go away and do a philosophy degree and like, deal with existentialism and then finish the game.
What is
there are so many there's so many edge cases. It's the game of edge cases basically in terms of like, because everything is on a step basis. So every time you move, there's no real time. It's just every time you move things. Actually, is that even true? Is there real time in the game?
No,
I don't think so.
Yeah, because there's a button to wait, isn't there? I was just thinking there is a way to make time unfold without you moving, but and so what that means, and this is the problem I've hit trying to make a turn-based game, is that loads of things are happening simultaneously. Like, if two things are trying to move to the same space, that's happening at the exact same time, and there's no inherent logic as to why one would get there before the other, and should it block the other, or should they both fail? Resolving that is like a two-fanged problem, because like on one hand, you've got to figure out a consistent rule set for this, just what is the answer to this? You've got to have some kind of consistent answer to program it. And the second one is, does that make sense to the player? And that second one is an absolute bastard to get right, because just whatever you think is logical in your little world of making your own little weird game often just crashes to the ground as soon as anyone else plays it.
Yeah.
It's amazing that they're able to do that at all.
But yeah, play that. It's very good.
From Baba is You to Warhammer is 2.
That was better than I was expecting.
Alex, would you like to take us on a journey to the world of Total War Warhammer 2?
Weirdly enough, I'd say that this is the game that I've put the most time into this year because it's just long. It takes a long time to play in the world of Warhammer.
Is that the main quality you got from it?
Value for money.
I don't know, because it's definitely occupied. It's a game that I think about a lot when I'm not playing, but I'm in the depth of a campaign. It's like it really does have that power that I've always loved getting into a game, that kind of, so that it sort of sticks there in your mind. And it's definitely done that. So I've done 2 campaigns this year. I done a Skaven one, and I'm in the last bit of a Lizard Man one at the moment. And I play this with my son, and so it's got a special. We sit down on a Saturday or whatever, and we just play and play and play, and do the one more go kind of sort of turn-based sort of can't stop playing thing. But it has this kind of quality where everything stays the same, in that the loop is the same. Like, you play your battle and then you take over a city, and you play a battle and you build more stuff so you can have more troops, and but it feels escalating as well. So like, it has that good feeling of a good strategy game where you're continually doing the same thing that you enjoy having battle, but the stakes feel like they're getting higher and you feel like you're getting more powerful, but actually you're doing the same thing. And I like that it's comfortable. It's
I was going to ask you, playing Mortal Empires campaigns or the Vortex?
No, so I have tried playing. So Mortal Empires is the mode where it has the entire map available on every faction, and nice. When you play, every other faction is playing at the same time, and there's no particular goal other than to sort of surpass everybody, I suppose.
Is this the one where, does it integrate Warhammer 1?
Yeah, yes.
It's the combined world map of both games.
Yeah, and factions from both of them. So you can, as long as you own the first one, you can choose any faction you like. But if you own the second one, everybody is still there, but you don't get to play them all. So that one, the turnover, like so when you start a new turn, it then calculates everyone else's turns. It takes ages. Apparently a new patch, I haven't tried it since, has apparently reduced that time, but it's so long that I just can't face it, because I had started a couple of matches that and kind of just got bogged down. So I've been doing Vortex ones. Vortex are the main campaigns with it, and they're very story based, and you're all sort of trying to beat each other to get to the Vortex first, doing ratty things or many things or whatever. But yeah, it's there's something about its detail and the fact that it so loves its core material. Like, I think that it's very much its own game. So it looks to Warhammer, like the original Warhammer. So this is before Age of Sigmar. It looks at the old world, which is what you can't even buy at Games Workshop anymore. But it makes a video game, a war game out of them. So it goes to a tabletop war game and makes its own war game out of it. It has its own units and things as well, but it has loads of references to the actual game, characters, sort of favoured kind of warlords and units and things, but they all feel totally native to this game, to Total War, frankly. And so there's just so many sort of little bits, like the rats is just such good fun. They play very differently to the lizard men. So the lizard men are about magic, quite a lot of magic, and they're tough as nails, so they can just stand there and take a lot of beating. Whereas the Skaven are fascinating because they are soft, they can get hit and tend to die very quickly, but there are lots of them in a unit, so they tend to stick around for a lot longer. But they also have very low leadership, and that's kind of an important stat in Total War. It's this gauge which, when it goes down to 0, your unit tries to run away. The rats goes down really, really quickly, but then they tend to reform really, really quickly as well. And they will that will completely break an enemy army's kind of formation because they start running after you, and then they reform, and they just can't get rid of them. They won't go away. You have these skirmisher units, which are usually range units, which you can just run around the map, and they'll just skirmish, throw stuff, and as soon as anyone comes near them, they run away, and they are such a pain in the ass. Now playing the lizard men, which are quite slow in general. Rat men are so annoying because the skirmishers will not go away, and you can't kill them, and they keep running away and come back. And it's that kind of granular detail, the love of the fact that follows the sort of the Skaven kind of identity so closely, is just really fun to get to know. So every time you play a new faction, which you haven't played before, and I haven't played many of the factions, like it's also like a journey into kind of, that's what this faction's about, and this is how they're fun. So yeah, lots of time spent it, and I've also enjoyed watching it. Watched a lot of, particularly a YouTuber called Lionheart.
Oh yeah,
and he's just nice to have in the background for playing a game.
It's had a lot of updates as
Lots
well.
of
Has
updates.
anything that's happened this year been particularly impactful?
So the reason I played the Skaven campaign is that one of the new Skaven lords, and whose name I can't remember, Ekit Claw.
Yeah,
Ekit Claw. And he's just a fun one. I'm really tempted to start.
They added nukes to Total War, which was fun.
Yeah, you can just blow up. Oh, the other thing about the Skaven, this is another nice thing, is that you don't have to have cities in order to take over and make money. You can create undercities in other faction cities, which you try to avoid them getting discovered. So that's really fun. There are loads of, and they are like Creative Assembly are just incredibly generous with their imagination about the new stuff they put in. So there's a new Skaven, which is an assassin-style character whose name I've completely forgotten. Probably should remember. Scritch, something like that.
He's Death Master, Snitch, something like that.
Yeah.
Sounds like a garageized.
And because he's an assassin, like he does the lordy things like all the other lords in Total War, but he's an assassin. So you get assassination jobs, and you make loads of money and get sort of kudos from other factions by just killing off characters. So you kind of send him off, or send characters off to assassinate people, and like that system has never been seen in this game before. And then they go, bam, let's put it in 2 years after we come out, or 3 years after we come out, in the second of the Total Warhammer games. Fuck it, put it in. So good. So you kind of like, even now there's just surprises coming in, and there's a whole new one coming at some point, maybe next year, I don't know when, but there's Total Warhammer 3 is coming. It's nice, I like.
Excellent.
Strong rat energy from you this year.
Yeah.
Plague Tale Innocence as well.
It's been 2K19 for me. Year of the rat.
Oh baby, when you dance like that, you make a woman go mad. So be mine, keep on watching The Sign of My Body. Sekiro.
You saw this coming, didn't you?
Or Sekiro, as it actually is more correctly pronounced. But I started, so I'll finish. Yeah, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. Or lots of times, over and over again. And eventually win once. Which would be the full subtitle. I think this was me and... you and I, Marsh, were the only two who picked this.
Well, Tom Senior also picked it.
Tom Senior did also pick it.
He picked it in spirit.
Yeah. So
I think you should talk about it because it's more a game that you're passionate about than I am. I liked it a lot, but I think actually it's probably my least favourite of the Bloodborne Souls games. Which I realise is apparently the wrong opinion. but yeah.
Don't let the noise I just made. Like,
by still being the
wrong opinion noise, you mean?
My least favourite of those, it's still above 90% of all other games.
Yeah, so this feels like such a long time ago now because it was February.
Yeah.
Sekiro came out. It is From Software's latest game, a kind of like samurai sort of, mythical adventure set in a sort of castle and its surroundings in the sort of Bloodborne, Dark Souls structure. But the heart of the game for me, and I think the reason that it is close to my favourite games of the year, is I think the best combat system they've ever built for my money. Moving away from the sort of RPG influences of Souls and Bloodborne specifically, towards a far more of a learn it and put what you've learned into practice style kind of character action system, which is just immensely satisfying. And I think the proof of that game for me, and of its kind of worth as a fighting game and as a really gratifying thing to learn and get better at, was getting to the last boss of the game, which is Nails, and a misery and a great experience at the same. Well, it's a misery and then it's a great experience, which is the arc of all like From Software bosses. From I hate this to this is the greatest thing I've ever experienced to I hate it again. Was realizing that my strategy, the gadgets I'd chosen to take with me, which are really its equivalents of it's how it gives you options and variety within your build, is which gadgets you initially invest in. Eventually, you'll have all of them. Then it's which ones you choose to focus on. Was completely different to someone else I was talking to about it, who also had their own way of progressing through the game. And I was sharing GIFs and clips of combos I'd discovered because of consistent ways that mechanics work between boss fights and things like that, which felt for me like a big sort of step, a really meaningful step forward from where From Software games had been previously, where you learn a boss and you learn also on a macro level a route through the game, and also probably a route through your character sheet that matches the route you're planning to take through the game. And there's a lot to like there in terms of knowing, gaining the particular texture of like, I'm going to do a magic-y run of Dark Souls, or I'm going to do a heavy armor run of Dark Souls. It doesn't have that degree of depth, I think, or maybe even replayability. But what it does have is this sense that at any given time, you have all of the tools you need to like crack open an encounter in a bunch of really, really cool ways. And I think also it's a great example of just getting every single part of a combat system to feel right and then be fair. So it very, very rarely throws something at you that feels completely bullshit or breaks the rules of the game. And actually, in kind of classic From Software style, it plans those moments quite carefully so that it does shock you when something doesn't happen quite as you expect it to. Or, it tends to be the sort of demonic or otherworldly enemies that break the rules in that way, which immediately feels right. And it has, I think, in that sense, a range of experience that Dark Souls and Bloodborne don't have either, from a one-on-one sword fight with another human being exciting to how would you fight a ghost, which is it's all ghosts all the time, really, the rest of the time. You know what I mean? Also, really lovely world. Really nice to see them do something rooted in Japanese culture and mythology specifically. It has it's set in a real period of history, but it has very much its own internal mythology and sort of set of kind of big symbols and things, and the kind of classic From Software stuff of like,
something's gone wrong with the way that people die.
yeah, exactly. People not dying properly, and someone.
Do you think? I mean, how many times do you think they can do that? Basically, because I think they've kind of successfully transposed it between 3 different sort of mythologies now. But it really is. I mean,
Kojima's taken it on as well, right?
Right. Yeah.
True. Yeah. But I don't know if it's something they can keep on reinventing. And with that point, it's going to be interesting to see if they abandon the entire structure of the game.
I was thinking that was something that was seen missing in the Star Wars Fallen, the new Star Wars game.
What a narrative justification for the structure.
Yeah, like the same rule happens, but like there's no explanation of what on earth and why.
Well, it feels like when you have the die and try again sort of school of design, if you were going to embody that in the fiction or the world building, which From Software always have, game's going to be about purgatory. just kind of is.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
you know, like they are purgatorial experiences about kind of, you know, graft and trying to prove yourself and progress to the next thing. You know, it's interesting to see that idea, you know, transposed between different belief systems, you know, away from the sort of Pilgrim's Progress-y sort of aspects of Dark Souls towards something else. But, you know, it's notable that Jedi Fallen Order, which has the same structure, just doesn't try and explain it, which is almost liberating, I think, for that game, that it can just use it as a video game.
Sure.
Rather than, you know, having to say something.
If the first time you die in Fallen Order, that's it, you become a Force ghost after that. You still play the rest of the game.
You just have to whisper every time anyone comes close.
You're telling someone else what
Give
to do.
motivational speeches to the next Jedi.
Yeah, you load
Actually, it could just be the next player.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone just gets one life and then you
Use the Force, Jeremy. Oh, for
Go
fuck's
on,
sake,
jump
not like
on.
that.
Yeah.
moron.
Just Twitch commenters.
The Force ghosts of the internet.
I mean, you don't have to talk about Sekiro, we're talking about redesigned Jedi Fallen Order. That could have been its equivalent of like writing on the ground or death warnings and things in Dark Souls. Is when you die, you just move to someone else's game and you're a Force ghost that haunts them. And then when they die, you're gone and they move to someone else. Or you're all there.
Yeah.
You know, no upper limit.
Imagine how fucking annoying it'd be to have like another player say use the Force.
Yeah,
Yeah, I fucking know. That's the whole point.
Press R1. Sekiro, though. Do you have any other takes on it, Marty?
No, not really.
Okay.
I agree with everything you said, really. I have to say, I think the reason it's less my kind of game than it is yours is precisely because it has that precise learn this system sort of thing, which I can admire the purity of, but I liked the wiggle room for my own incompetence that the RPG systems previously supplied.
That's what frightened me off it.
If it wasn't something that I could manage one way, then I could change tack and do something different in Dark Souls or Bloodborne.
When Chris was talking about it, it sounded a lot like when you're talking about, what was that game with the stabbing and the like?
Oh yeah,
all of the. You're being sarcastic. You know, you got super into it, and that one-on-one
Was it the online
sword
mush?
fighting.
Yeah, was it
Mordhau?
Absolution or something?
Yeah, it sounds like
the Mordhau or Blade Symphony?
Both of them.
What's
Blade
the one
Symphony
with the name
is
that sounds
the one
like
I was
Absolution?
thinking of.
One that sounds like Absolver.
Absolver, that's it.
But it
Absolver was the punchy one.
Yeah.
But it felt like hearing you describe those had a lot in common with hearing you describe what you like about Sekiro.
Yeah.
and you love sword fighting, right? As both in games and
Used
slightly
to,
in
but
real
yeah.
life.
But also, I mean, I like sword fighting systems. I think they're interesting, particularly in the multiplayer context. But yeah.
It's interesting because I actually got on better with Sekiro than Dark Souls, even though I'm very much not up to the skill level of any of them. But with Sekiro, I felt like I knew what it was I was being asked to learn, and I knew when I was failing at it, and that if I failed to fight in Sekiro, I knew I should be able to do this with what I currently have. Whereas Dark Souls, I think, was a bit more fuzzy and a bit more like, am I just going the wrong way? Is this just not where I should be?
I think a lot of the kind of the poor / intentionally poor signposting of the earlier games has sort of been beveled off in Sekiro, and I think it's probably for the best. Like, I think they've whether that's part of their partnership with Activision or not, I don't know, but it seems like there's a sort of focus on the mass market with Sekiro to some extent.
To some extent, yeah.
Yeah, which I think is... I don't mean that as a...
They don't like kill streak rewards or...
no. I don't mean that as a slight at all. I think they've thought about how more people than themselves play these games and how they could best make other people enjoy it.
Also had a grappling hook.
And did have a grappling hook. Yeah, the traversal in that game is fantastic.
Yeah, and actually was... I'm half joking because I just like grappling hooks, but also that is a big reason I think I got on better with it than Dark Souls, was that my main problem with that whole genre is that I don't like to repeat myself, and they're all about repeating yourself. But in Sekiro, when I'm doing the same section again, I'm sneaking past people and I'm using grappling hook to get to, like, take an alternate route around the side and finding clever ways to do it on my third time through. And so there's more joy in that than there was in Dark Souls.
It's also, because it is a light puzzle stealth game as well. Like, it has those sort of features.
And I really like it as a stealth game as well. And that is also interesting. It's an interesting sort of alternative to the sort of the pressure valve that you have in the Dark Souls games, where once you've learnt an area, you just fucking pelt through it. Whereas in this, there's legitimate ways where you can just completely avoid combat, and the game doesn't punish you at all for that.
I think Tom touched on something that was important to me about it as well, which is that...
Grappling hook.
Well, so personally, like, I find the anxiety that I haven't upgraded myself or my equipment in the right way kind of punishing in Dark Souls. Like, the fear of, like, I didn't find the items at the right time, so I'm not giving myself a slog to go back and find the upgrades and things. Reducing that, the importance of resources, honestly, like, they are important. You can buy things and upgrade things, but it's not as big a deal to lose the stuff you've amassed, and it's also not a big a deal to miss a pickup or something like that.
Yeah.
I find really freeing because I think there's two sides to that. I think there's one is like getting stuck on a boss, and as Tom says, knowing I actually do have all the pieces I need to have for this. Occasionally in the game, there's stuff that you can go and find that will help, but like, you know, it is possible with what I have. And the second side to that is the you know, you may or may not like it all the time, but there isn't like a more fun build I didn't do. You know what I mean? The sort of the possibility space of a Bloodborne or a Souls is such that, like, my best you know experience playing Bloodborne was with Tom Senior, who was so experienced with it that he could point me towards fun things I wouldn't have found otherwise. And that's one of the social nature of the game and the purpose of the markings and things like that as well. So it's only part of it, but I find that anxiety takes me out of it a bit. Whereas I quite like Sekiro. It's just sword fight this man now, and when he jump in the air, do lightning. Just deal with it.
I did miss the Fashion Souls aspect of it, though. Could
Yeah.
done with a little bit more dress up.
Yes, you can't. Yeah, you really can't dress up, and it is very serious. Like I don't know. I feel like it was a long time ago now since I finished it.
There's some good fucking jokes in that game, though. Like mechanical jokes as well.
Yeah.
This is a spoiler, but you come across a gigantic dude who looks like a Teutonic Knight. So it's sort of like a callback to Dark Souls, and he's standing on the center of this bridge, and you can't, you can't do anything to him. You can't damage him. You can't stab him or anything. And you eventually work out the way to defeat him is just to kick him off the bridge. And it's a tremendous sort of...
Whose name does he shout?
Robert!
Yeah, he shouts Robert, and then he falls into the pit.
Yeah, which I think is meant to be some sort of, maybe a cross-brands callback. I don't know.
Yeah. It is also a weirdly scatological game. Like, it loves shit and poo and farting. Like, and then sort of very grim samurai kind of going at each other.
Yeah, I do like how hideous and all the samurai are. They're just grubby little men.
Good, really good, grotesque humans. I mean, and From have always been good at this, but in previous games, literally, they are monsters. You know, the townspeople of Yharnam or, you know, Dark Souls, hollow zombie people. Whereas in this, it's just like a hyper-realized, like, you know, almost samurai horror grotesque thing where some of them just massive.
Yeah.
Just fucking massive. There's no segue here, I don't think.
Okay.
It sounds like a James Bond title, though. Shadows Die Twice.
Shadows Die Twice.
Or no segue here.
No segue here. Please don't segue here, James.
It's more just like a public safety.
You mad lad. You probably would be allowed to ride a Segway around Far Cry New Dawn, wouldn't you?
Apocalyptic segue.
It's a good game. I was surprised by this one. You sent around a long list of games that came out this year, and I surprised myself by thinking, oh shit, that was one of my games of the year for sure. Because I kind of forgot that...
The rum.
Making
Sorry.
hand
The
motions.
system was failing.
Sorry, Tom.
The flailing.
No worries. I kind of forgot how much I loved that game and how much time I spent with it. And so my other two picks were Outer Wilds and Disco Elysium, both of which are very original and fresh games that do interesting, bold things. Frankly, this choice is a lot less respectable. But...
Shame of the year.
Yeah.
Let's explore Tom's shame.
Actually, maybe we should all nominate at the end of this podcast. Think of it now. Nominate your Shame of the Year alongside your Game of the Year.
But I
Within the
don't
context of
feel
games.
ashamed of picking it because it is the thing I love about it and the thing it exemplifies is just like getting a chunk of game that works, chunk of game systems that work really well together, creating an experience that works and then just making it better and better and better every single time. Like, not everyone thinks this, but for me, Far Cry 3, when it introduced the outposts, that was like a watershed moment for the series, and that was like just stealth gameplay in general and open world gameplay in general. And ever since then, I was obsessed with it in Far Cry 3. I've been obsessed with it in every Far Cry game since, and they've been making it better and better. I don't know if they have like common level designers between all these games, but it feels like they do because they're all good. Like every Far Cry game that has outposts in it has great outposts that are really well designed. There are loads of ways to approach it. And New Dawn just kept on making that stuff work better. It's more than almost any other open world game. You feel like if I just walk across the world, the stuff I get into along the way is satisfying and meaningful, and it's getting me towards my long-term goals and stuff. It's almost like the Civ thing, where you have like these long-term and short-term goals, and everything is progress towards something. And then I particularly want to shout out the like expeditions, I think they might be called, where you fly out on a chopper to some other location. And it was kind of, when they announced it, it felt like, oh, this is sort of a cost-cutting measure to let them do a variety of locations without having to make a whole fucking open world that spans, all these completely different biomes and figures out why this, abandoned tanker is, how that fits into the world they've made. But they actually turned out to be one of my favourite bits, because they are a little chunk of, it's basically like a massive open-ended level. It's not as big as the open world of the main game by any means, but they got to do some proper like level design for that, where they know what you're trying to do in this area, and you can still approach from any angle. It's big enough that you can take loads of different approaches. And you're just trying to get to a certain crate or something and pick it up, and then once you pick it up, you have like 30 seconds before everyone knows where you are, and then maybe 2 minutes before your ride shows up. And so it's great for, it lets you do the stealth thing. I get to do it my way, with a bow and a rock, and sneak in and take ages over it and figure out the way to do it perfectly. And then when I get to the thing, I'm going to have a madcap chase out of there. And if you just leave the player to their own devices and make a true systems-driven open world where you can play however you like, the downside of that for me is I only like the stealth thing, and so I'll never do the action thing. And if I ever get into an action-type situation, I'm already feeling bad because I fucked up the stealth thing. Whereas in this, by making that a mandatory part of it, like there's just going to be a period where everyone knows where you are and you just do something about it. I get to have that kind of high adrenaline moment and deal with that and get into, madcap scrapes and stuff. But I don't feel like it's because I failed. It's a natural part of the mission. You have to do that. And there's also a great pleasure in skipping content. Like if you have like a linear start to finish game and you find a way to do the level in like 15 seconds, you sort of feel you've broken the game, and you're sort of thinking like, even if you might feel proud of yourself for finding that, but you're also thinking like, wow, this game's going to be short for me. These, you come back to them multiple times, so every location. One of them is just like a massive bridge across a chasm, and the objective is on the other side of the chasm, and you can go across the top of the bridge, or you can just, the cool way to do it is to wingsuit off the cliff, and then while wingsuiting, steer yourself under the bridge, then throw a grappling hook up to the bridge, and then Tarzan the rest of the way, like letting go of it, and figuring out that making that work for the first time was super cool. And if the package is on the cliff edge and you find a way to swing your grappling hook such that you can launch yourself into the air and then grab onto a ledge and get there and just get to it and then leave again, that feels amazing, because I just skipped all that fucking content, all that stuff that they made for me that I missed. But it doesn't have the problem of like, oh, I made the game too short for myself and I missed out, because the next, after you complete that, you get to go back there and like, oh, they've tightened security now because you robbed them last time, and now the package is in a different location. The enemies are all in different places, and they're tougher and require cleverer ways to take them out. And so you're going to go back and do it again. You get to see different parts of the level and take a different approach. And that feels like we're finally getting towards some patterns for this kind of stuff where you get to explore more of the breadth of open world games and multiple approach games and emergent games. That we've had those, for decades, but they've just been kind of a straightforward approach where we've made this possibility space, you find your way through it, whatever you like, and it's cool that you get to do that, and that feels great. But now we're finding ways, like, even if you have a particular style you like, I think New Dawn is as good as any game that I've played at letting you explore other ways of playing within that without having to sort of start a new game and make the fun yourself and decide, I'm going to play a different character this time because I want to explore that possibility space. They're finding smarter ways to just lead you into that naturally and let you have more fun.
I don't know much about New Dawn, but I do love that.
Oh, God.
Cowboys love a big old sunset.
It's very good.
And speaking, of course,
of Red Dead Redemption 2, which is weirdly almost the exact mirror of all the things you like. It seems
like the opposite.
Well, I think Rockstar games in general, but specifically Red Dead 2, they all have the problem where instead of allowing you this big open space where you can do things freeform, it gives you the suggestion of that and then immediately trammels you into a specific way of doing things, and then usually there's a cutscene in the middle of what you're doing, and then one of your idiot friends fucks everything up, and then you have to do things precisely the way the designers want. And that's sort of still mostly true of Red Dead Redemption 2. I think the mission design in general has become a lot more simple, weirdly, with this game. But the thing I appreciate about it is that those missions, in fact, really any activity in Red Dead Redemption 2 exists within just a much larger, almost empty space. It's a game about the spaces between the things that you do rather than the stuff that you do, or at least that's the way that I enjoy it. And so most of my time in the game, the thing that I really love about it is just going between mission pointers. There's no fast travel in the game, so you have to go everywhere on your horse, and it's weird that I've got sucked into it because I usually really hate all the kind of Tamagotchi shit of the previous GTAs and things where you're looking after your health and deciding what beard length you want and all these things. And I love that stuff in Red Dead Redemption 2. I've really got into it. I have a really strong bond with my horse, Big Heidi.
Did you choose that name?
I did. It's named after my cat. But obviously,
bigger because a horse.
Yeah,
I saw a horse in town the other day.
Did you? Really? Well, you'll be pleased to know.
The rumours are true.
If you're an appreciator of big horses, you'd like to know that Big Heidi is one of the biggest that you can get.
Incredible.
Not being a horse expert, having seen actually very few of them in the flesh in my life, I wasn't aware as I was purchasing this horse exactly its size relative to other horses until there was a mission where I had to ride with other people. And my horse is like 5 times the size of everybody else's. It's like they're riding on the cats or something. I'm riding on a real horse.
Is it a Shire horse?
I don't know what it is.
Like, this is massive.
She's very fat and she's very slow and she gets easily scared by loud noises, which is a little bit like my cat as well, which is quite good. But she's a good horse. Good horse. I can just leave it there, really. I think it's a weird game because there's so much that's sort of terrible about it.
Quite down on choices.
Well, no, I mean, I think this would be my sort of shame game because I think it's had a rough ride. Actually, I don't know what the reviews were. I don't know what the reviews were like, but generally amongst our peers, it seems that people have been a bit down on it, or just sort of dismissed it as the boring cowboy game. And I don't think it really deserves that. It's after the whole Rockstar employee scandal and the number of hours that went into this game got exposed and how much overtime there was and how cruel that was, etc. And I think GTA 5, its sort of shtick left a sort of unpleasant taste in people's mouths. Those two things combined have sort of cast a bit of a pall over the release of Red Dead Redemption 2, and I think people have been quick to dunk on it, but it's their most humane game they've released. The story in it it doesn't exactly ignite very quickly. There's not a huge amount of momentum to it. You're just part of this gang roaming around the world, basically trying to make ends meet. And there is some sort of narrative propellant in that you've been kicked out of a town, basically chased out of there by Pinkertons, and you've left some money there. So, and there are the tensions within the gang that are building. But really, that's it. There's no kind of like, oh, we need to get to the fucking spire, or whatever. There's no kind of thing on the horizon that you're going towards throughout the game. You're just you're trying to get food and money for this camp of dissolutes, basically. and it's and the characters within it are really good. There's almost no wacky comedy characters in it at all. There are some who are on the fringe of being Rockstar wacky, but none of the main characters you meet are really that aggravating in that way. You don't often... The one thing I hate about Rockstar games that they've always been guilty about is you end up doing missions for and these people just... You would never engage their services. You never want to do a job for a capering gravedigger, you know, or whatever. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. You've murdered half the population of, you know, not San Francisco, and yet you're doing a job for one corrupt official who's
or a snake oil salesman.
Yeah, or something like that. It doesn't make any sense. But there's none of those characters really in this game, and you're never compromised in that way to the same extent, anyway. And your character is quite interesting, and I think he's probably one of the more consistently written characters in those games. And the leader of your gang is a fantastic piece of writing. He's obviously in the previous game as well, Dutch van der Linde, as your sort of the nemesis that you're hunting down ultimately through the course of that game. But in this, which is a prequel, he's just the sort of mentor of your group, and he's an incredibly charismatic figure, and you understand why people would follow this man and why he would sell these promises of sort of like a living free in America, and actually at the same time perpetuating terrible violence. And those two things are kind of really, really well kind of put together in the game. Kind of, yeah.
I really like it now.
Wow.
No, it's funny because I was playing it last night.
Oh yeah,
and because I went back to it partly because you've been enjoying it, and I wanted to go because I've been playing on PS4 and just stopped after I got big town problems.
Oh yeah,
just got a bit overwhelmed and just stopped. And last night I won't sort of, for fear of spoilers, I did a mission where we save a member of the camp that's been away, and I got back to the camp having successfully done it. Everyone's kind of really pleased with having done this thing, because the person you saved is someone you want to have saved because they are an innocent in this world. And you get back to camp and it's night, and there's, you know, and this is a game where they've put so much effort into every detail. I could have just wandered straight out of camp after I got back, but I didn't. And a lot of the characters was by the fire singing a song because they were celebrating, and they all had unique sort of dialogue because we just say the thing. They all had something to say about it. And I just walked around the camp, just sort of, and I didn't do this when I was playing before because I was sort of, I want to get to the next thing. And
yeah.
Took some time, and then I went inside the house where we were kind of staying. I went upstairs to my room because I couldn't remember where anything was, and like looked around, and there's this weird banging noise. And I went outside. There's a thunderstorm, and there's a large city across this swamp or water from where we are, and there's this enormous thunderstorm playing over the top of this city, which you can see the lights of. The clouds are lighting up, huge thunder, and like you can feel the closeness of the air. I put my lantern on so I could stop sort of falling into stuff as I was walking around outside, because I went outside, and it picked up all these bugs that are all just flying around. And it's like fucking hell. Yeah. And then it started raining where we are, because of course the rain had come over to where I was, and I thought, fucking hell, this was nice.
That's where all those man hours went.
Yeah, and it's sort of like there's a shame in realizing that like it in this case it took that to create that, but at the same time taken out simply as it is, you know, which is difficult to do. Like it is sublime in places.
Oh yeah, I mean that's exactly the right word. I mean it is about the sublime, about the natural world, and there's something particularly like I think games have taken a while to get up to that level of fidelity where they trigger the things in your early man settler brain where you just look at a bucolic landscape and you realise that it has all the resources that you need to live in it, and that just makes all the endorphins in your brain explode. But this game does it all the time. And I know the Mexico moment where you crash the hill and the music kicks in is a bit of a cliche
from the first game.
But it does that using a lot of generative systems in this game, which is interesting. There's an interesting use of music. There's a point in the game when you... I don't know if this was the way you were meant to approach this environment or it was just coincidence, but there was sort of some music playing as I was travelling. I come through a forest and make my way down into a valley, and as I'm doing this, the kind of music builds in this kind of slightly sinister kind of rhythm, this kind of big shaking noise, and I realised that the music has synced up with the sound of oil. What are they called? Donkeys, you know? These huge things that are making the entire landscape shudder. But it was... But the effect of that was so potent and impressive, and presumably emerged from the synchronization of a dynamic system and a scripted system. And there's lots of that kind of very subtle, really artful stuff in the game. It's good. But I mean, at the same time, as all of that stuff, like, as good as all of that world building stuff is, its UI is as bad in equal measure. It's astonishing that there has a game where the shoot button is inconsistent and can sometimes mean interact with your horse. or talk to a person.
Shooting is an interaction.
Well, yeah, but I mean... You know, sometimes it'll say, talk to the stranger, and then left trigger. And then other times, left trigger will be pull your gun at somebody. And so it gets confused itself. Sometimes it says, point your gun with right trigger. I'm like, that sounds like the shoot button. It definitely says point. And then I pointed the gun, shot him in the head. Mission over.
Look, shooting involves pointing.
It's true. But it's a real mess.
This is why Big Heidi is a bit afraid of
Loud noises.
Yeah.
I've never shot Big Heidi.
She's seen though. She's right there.
He does not know what he's doing.
This man.
He could be one inventory access away from instant death.
One left trigger, and I'm done.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff with the systems as well. You kind of manage health, and then there's stamina, and then there's some other thing, and this is based around some bar that appears to deplete quickly, and then there's a core, which
Gotta keep those cores up.
I don't know. I've played it for maybe 100 hours now. I still have no idea what those
You just don't know
things
how close
do.
you are to death.
No, it doesn't make any sense at all.
There's like a weird UI paradigm where like there's a thing in the centre and then there's a bar on the side.
Circle.
And I can't remember which way around it is, but whatever around it is the opposite of what you think. Like the one that's really prominent and noticeable is not that important, and the one that's much more
Is that
subtle
right?
is really
Okay,
important.
well that would explain why I often die and I have no idea why. But, yeah.
What is a horse?
Okay.
But
A miserable pile of secrets.
what is a horse but a boat that can be afraid? And what is a cowboy if not a pirate of the land? Pip?
I mean, I'm not supporting any of what you just said, but I'm assuming you want to talk about Sea of Thieves.
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Is that right?
Wow. I mean, it's fine, but like, are you okay?
I'm riding this segue all the way to the end of the line. That's my rockstar story.
And into the sea.
Yeah, exactly.
Sea of Thieves, the rare game that I rejected because it involved me having to use the Windows Store, and you know how I feel about the Windows Store.
I understand.
And then I gave in because I wasn't going to play Destiny, so I thought I might as well be a pirate and still have friends, because friends play both of them, and I'm not ready to go back to Destiny still. So I started playing that probably a month ago at this point, and it has become one of my favourite games of this year. So, and I think I started playing it just after they'd added fire. So I've never known that game without things being massively on fire within 10 minutes of boarding a ship. So, but that seems to add quite a lot of action in the form of putting fires out and diving off the ship.
It does like it's in a very good place, I think. You know, I mean, I appreciate we're coming to it the year after its release, but it's obviously benefited from that subsequent year, and it's very rich. As like, I think I said on the podcast before that I don't necessarily always get on with co-op, really, because of my issues as a human. But we have played like a lot of successful Sea of Thieves co-op now, Let's see. Do you agree?
What's your take?
I mean, I do my own thing, and then Chris says, "Why are you over there?" In a nice way.
In a nice way.
But there was a moment where... Have you told this story on the podcast?
I don't think I have.
The
Which one?
Tale.
Which one?
Oh, so we did a mission on the main...
This one. Yeah, okay. It's the very first mission in the game, I think.
Okay, well, do you want to tell the story your way? And then I will...
Maybe you can tell it your way. Okay, so thank you. This is a trap. So we took with the tall tales are like story missions essentially, and I think one slightly missed opportunity is they're not. They are the same every time you do them. So when you load into a new multiplayer map, the position of islands changes, but where certain things will be on a mission are the same. So you'll follow clues in in a book, like of varying kinds. So the first one in this one is always find. We lost this particular treasure map in a atoll of islands that wasn't on the map. Between these two islands. So you find those two islands on the map, and then you try and locate a place between them. You sail between them, you're looking for some undiscovered island along the way, then you dive nearby.
I marked on the map lots of circles in a line between those two islands, so we knew the line on which we were searching. Chris came and removed all of them except the one in the very middle, because it looked like a mess.
And where was the island?
I don't know.
It was in the middle. So and actually, so to maybe zoom out a little bit on Sea of Thieves as a whole. Sea of Thieves is really neat because it's it's a piracy sailing simulator with a decent amount of mechanical depth in terms of doing stuff with sails to make boat go fast, thinking about wind, and the ocean is extraordinary as a sort of spectacle and the rest of it.
It's the best water I've seen in a game of that type.
Yeah, I've been enjoying our screenshots.
Yeah, there's a few other games that do really interesting things with water, so I don't want to say it's the best of all, but yeah, I've screenshotted so much. It's why I keep falling overboard, because I keep standing on precarious things and then walking off them by accident.
And I think crucially for, I don't know if there's a word for this, maybe Tom, you might know, so it obviously it has a lot of UI for cycling through your inventory and finding stuff to use, but it's controlled entirely from the first person, and every device in the environment is physically present in the environment. So when you're controlling a boat, you don't go into boat view. I wonder if there's a word for always being in your own skin, even when operating at different modes of play, from firing a cannon to doing a boat. So if you want to raise or lower the certain sails, or angle the sails, or drop the anchor, or load a cannon, you are physically running around the boat doing all of that stuff. And that's the benefit of having other players with you, because that's what they do, is they do all this stuff. Your friend Dan does all this stuff. Pip takes photos.
Well, and fishes.
And fishes.
Yes. Yeah. And also experiments with, I've realised that my instinct isn't to lower the anchor ever when there's treasure. It's just, there's treasure, and then jump overboard and swim to it, and then make it someone else's problem fetching me. So,
it has really set off my, I don't have children. But I now understand what I'm going to be like on a family holiday in a way that I didn't before we played this game. In a sort of we're stopping. If you jump out again, we're stopping. But this is so to tell the story of this mission, you go into the thing, you're trying to find a particular item that will get you into a sort of underground Pirates of the Caribbean style pirate undead cave mystery sort of thing. And we go into this, mystery chamber where you're going to have to be rotating symbols on columns to try and match patterns, and the room is filling with water, sort of Indiana Jones style. What happened, Pip?
Right, so I want it known that before you open that room, you have to put an idol in a place. And then we got into the room, and Chris and our lovely friend Dan, who is the most responsible person ever in all of these missions, weren't sure how to progress or what to do in that moment. So I thought I would leave the room to go and see whether I could pick up the totem thing to then bring it back in case we needed it for something else. Meanwhile, Chris activates something that shuts the door, and I'm like, well, I'm outside. And then you and Dan were going, but why are you outside? Why did you run off?
We're drowning and we can't solve this puzzle.
Yeah, and so I was like, but I mean, I'm good at puzzle solving, so this is a shame, isn't it?
I remember this slightly differently,
differently,
because I remember us entering the puzzle chamber that you have to activate initially by using a lantern to light certain torches, and that starts the puzzle. And you being so immediately bored, you basically bunny hopped in a circle around the room and immediately left. Then the door closed and we drowned.
I did do that, but I didn't do that without reasons. I thought, this is dull, I'll try something else, and left the room to try something else.
We've had loads of good moments with it, and sea battles are very, like, you don't see other ships are always either like an undead ship, like a NPC encounter, which are quite rigid in the way they can happen, and their ships can flee back under the sea, as skeletons are wont to do. Any other ship you see is players, and what they choose to do is up to them. If you find treasure, you've got to get it back to an island with a shop on it to sell it, and any other player can take it in that time and do whatever. It's all very sort of analog and there in the world. There's nothing sort of really registered to your account or any bonus you get just from finding treasure. You have to return it as well. And the sea battles are genuinely really cool. I really enjoyed them.
I had some really bad ones yesterday, actually, which was really annoying.
How does a bad sea battle manifest itself?
It wasn't exactly that the battle itself was bad. It's that it was one of those scenarios where either the people that we were fighting were genuinely like expert PvP people who probably played a lot of the arena mode, and were therefore just able to outgun us at every available opportunity, and just had a blunderbuss and could like get on the ship, and as soon as they were there it was just who has flailed for a gun first wins, or they would like camp out the spawns back onto the boat kind of thing, and took all of our treasure. So it might have just been that they were really good, but also there were a few moments where then they kind of were pursuing us across the map in ways that didn't feel quite right. Like, so it was like, how do you know where we are at this point? Like, and we would, like they'd sunk our ship at that point, so we'd spawned somewhere completely different. So it was like, how are you here immediately? And it kind of felt like, I don't know how big of a problem cheating is in that game, or whether, these are specific things that people are exploiting or anything like that. And then there was a moment where we were, one of our crew was actually on the enemy ship at some point, so they could see that it was like really badly damaged and was taking on water and all of that stuff. And a few moments later, it was fine, and it's like, that's not possible. You have to have got the wood and like fixed the thing and bailed it out, and it would. So it was those things that tipped me over into this isn't quite ringing true, but it was one of those slightly sour experiences that I'm kind of sad that I had so close to this podcast, because it was like, it felt like the sort of thing where you just feel run off a server, you feel like, well, if we're going to play more, we should just, stop and then regroup and then log in again and hope that they're not there. And that's kind of sour, but...
Well, hopefully those things will be fixed over time, as exploits are discovered. Yeah.
I'm assuming that it's just that ongoing, what's it called? The arms race, between the developers and people who hack things.
Did anyone see Crystal Livingston's article about a sort of semi-griefing strategy he was using?
No.
I don't remember this right. It was something like he was basically sort of stealing people's ships by hiding and placing, I think, like barrels of dynamite near the shop and waiting till they went to sell their stuff, and then shooting a barrel and killing them all. And then taking their stuff.
Wow. Yeah, that would work.
So this maybe leads into the story of the time we furnished an excellent experience for some other people we'll never know, which is we went on a really long journey and we amassed many barrels of gunpowder, which are very valuable, but they're also good weapons. You can drop them.
Nothing to do with this.
You were. Gunpowder, you can go and sell it to a trader. It's also, you can be used as a weapon in a bunch of creative ways. You can drop it behind the ship, into the path of another ship. Like that's one thing I'd say is really super positive about its ship combat, is it's so analog. Like when you're firing a cannon, you want the cannonball to go in under the waterline because that will affect how much water the ship takes on. They create holes in ships. People are going manually patching up as the ship literally fills with water rather than it being just you've taken 20 points of damage or something like that. It feels really cool.
By lightning just after a Kraken attack yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot.
Yeah, like, you know, chasing a player ship and having them try and flee into a storm and chasing them feels like it should. That's a big achievement.
And sometimes you lose sight of them because the waves are so big at that point.
And you're looking for that mast and things, and one of you's climbing the mast so that you can look.
And you can go dark by switching off your lanterns, and
yeah,
that's awesome.
It's not. I think you'd like it, Martin. I think
the
things you would enjoy.
Yeah, it's only the window store that's from it.
But so we were on this adventure and we'd done a bunch of runs successfully, and I remember we got to port and there's a current event on our most of the current season where you find these treasure chests you can sell, but they're locked. You find these keys that you can sell, but they're, you know, ideally you want to find both in a single run. And we had like a couple of keys, I think, and we were trying to go and try and find some of these chests. But we've also been collecting gunpowder. And, because it's valuable, but we thought we might use it as a fun weapon or something like that. And we were keeping it at the back of the ship, because you can pick exactly where treasure goes on the ship. They're big craft. You can go and place them all in a certain place. We'd hidden them under the stairs, basically. And
again, I didn't.
Dan and I were trying to make this safe for everybody. And we got to port, we were in port, and I said, look, I think we need to make a decision. I think we need to decide to do either finding the cool treasure or becoming gunpowder smugglers who may also use this, get to use their stash as a weapon. I think if we try and do both, we're going to explode and get neither. So let's cash in one of these things now. Like, probably the profitable thing to do would be cash in the 6 barrels of gunpowder we had, or the other stuff, and then just become, you know, a liability, basically a floating liability. Anyway, no one was listening to me, Chris.
No, if memory serves, you suggested selling all but 2 of the gunpowder.
Yeah, that's
I very much enjoy this Christmas airing of the grievances.
And you knew full well that I was not going to do that because I was doing something else. I'd wandered off.
Yes,
so I really feel like that was on you. And so it was down to you and Dan because, that was clearly where the plan was, because I was nothing to do with the gunpowder at all. And so I think from that point onwards, the fact that neither of you sold 4 gunpowder barrels is entirely on both of your heads.
I asked everyone else what they like to do. No one gave me an answer. I just got on with it. So anyway, we made no decision, and we went along with both. And we were sailing across the sea, and then we got into, I think another ship came for us, and they overshot us. And I think we were in a brigantine, they were in a galleon, so they were in a 4-player ship, we were in a 3-player ship, because you have different sized ships for different group sizes. And we gave chase, and it was one of the best, organised, acts of outmaneuvering. You know, a lot of it is knowing, because you have to be able to say, we're going to pass them on the left, get to the port side cannons. You know, that sort of, because if players are in the wrong place, then you're not going to fire when you get this opportunity to fire. You have limited ammo on the boat, opportunity to fire accurate, sparse. You know, it rewards, robust teamwork, the sorts of things I love, really, really well. The only person who does care. I'm not going to say I get a little bit bossy in these moments, but sometimes I get a little bit bossy because I'm steering and I can
do you have a clipboard with you as well?
He basically has a captain's hat on at that point.
But it's really satisfying when it all comes together, because you can do things like, if you drop the anchor while at speed, you can basically do a handbrake turn.
Or you can harpoon onto an enemy ship and
then
just
try and swing around.
Oh, wow.
Them. Or if you've got a rowboat with a harpoon, you can ride the rowboat as a kind of weird, skateboard attached to a bus.
Awesome.
Which worked amazingly until Tom Hatfield just disappeared from the rowboat and we're like, are you alright? And he's like, I'm in the sea!
And so we're chasing this galleon and getting quite a lot of good shots in beneath the waterline, and always nipping past them really quickly so they're not getting shots off and they seem in a bit of disarray. We do a cool boat power slide, and dropping the anchor is really quick, raising the anchor is really slow, but the more players are hoisting it, the faster it goes. So you can do these coordination things, drop the anchor, spin, everyone on the anchor, get it back up again, and we're going again. And then we get to this point where we're closing, it's very exciting, and they fire one shot, and it's that bit in like a Hornblower novel or something where it hits the magazine. Like it goes straight in under the deck, goes straight into those 6 barrels of gunpowder, and we just fucking explode I think that's about as much gunpowder as you would realistically ever have. And so I don't know what these other players' experience was, but I wish I could have been in their group chat or on their Discord or whatever at that moment where they go like, oh shit, these assholes are still chasing us. Someone goes like, I'll fire once, and then our ship detonates. Like we've just all decided to leave.
Nova.
We just go
that
supernova.
Was the point where I realised that no one had sold the gunpowder.
I got blown like 200 feet in the air and like died immediately. And then I got an achievement for someone else selling an extraordinary amount of our treasure.
Yeah, that was galling.
About 5 minutes later, as I was sort of like pootling around on a beach somewhere, having respawned, sort of everyone's like saying, "Oh, should we get another ship and go out?" I'm like, "Yeah."
That's an amazing achievement. Congratulations. You lost in a really phenomenally bad way.
You boosted the economy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But man, the
trickle-down piracy.
If you ever want to play it with us, let us know.
It is really fun. It is really fun.
And also, I go quite hard on like Yar and pirate roleplay. No one will come with me.
Does Chris insist on referring to things as port and starboard?
I actually do as well, because my neat hack of port has the same number of letters as left, and that is I've earned my place on many a crew now. that useful piece of information.
It's a huge relief to me when we play with people who, like friend Ben who dropped in last time, who also get there's a very specific guilt associated with I'm taking this seriously. I'm taking this seriously. It's happening. Like, tack the sails! We're going into the wind, you idiots! Like, and then it all starts coming out.
Well, partridge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like,
He did shout at me about the anchor at one point, and I'm just kind of
I had to sprint the length of the boat to drop the anchor because we were going to crash, and I was like, Pip, can you drop the anchor? Because you stood right next to it.
But I was busy.
No! You can also spend your real money.
No, I think I said, what now? But I'm taking it very seriously. I'm just doing different things. I have different skills.
It was a lovely photograph of the anchor that she did.
Exactly. I think all of Pip's amazing, and they are amazing Sea of Thieves screenshots.
Yeah.
Need to be understood for the context that behind the camera is my avatar
on fire,
running like trying to like hoist sails and like.
When I play with the PC gamer people, like, we are now in the habit of basically at the end of a session setting our ship on fire and gradually watching it go down. And usually we've forgotten something important, and our friend Tom has to just like suddenly like run on board, like has to like swim and then climb up the side, and he's on fire and he's like, right, I've got the thing. It's like, sorry. But yeah, so I like that game.
It is
good. Really good.
It is good, and the only thing it gives you for selling treasure, progressing, is cosmetics. There's an interesting thing about it. There's no real leveling up. You've got everything you need from the beginning of the game, which is a recurring theme, I think, for games I like. But
I'm trying to work out what
just
to
bigger
spend my
hats.
money on, because a friend of mine got so annoyed that I wouldn't upgrade. Or he hated how I looked in the default like shit armor, or like the stupid like raggedy cloth and plain things. So now I will never not wear it. And so every time we have a massive haul of treasure, I'm like, oh, look what I bought. And he's like, is it clothes? And you're like, no, it's a telescope. It's sails.
Anyway, good hurdy-gurdies as well.
Oh.
You can play the hurdy-gurdy with your friends. It's got dynamic hurdy-gurdy syncing across multiple musical instruments.
And you can make a little monkey dance.
You can. You can buy.
Oh wow!
You can buy animals for real money, give them names, and then make them dance.
What one's yours?
I have a cockatoo called Mr. Skeleton.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not
a big Heidi in this
like
game.
Could have a big Heidi.
You could have a big Heidi. Some people thought that was because of the phrase "Thank Mr. Skeleton," which I think maybe stems from Dark Souls actually. But it's not. It's because of a complete misunderstanding of a name of a character in the incredible Wachowski movie Jupiter Ascending.
I have seen that. I don't remember any of it, which is probably a blessing.
There was a character who definitely wasn't called Mr. Skeleton, who I completely misunderstood as being Mr. Skeleton.
Yeah.
Didn't Sean Pertwee turn up as somebody who can control bees?
Sean Bean.
Oh, Sean Bean. There you go.
Yeah. You can.
It's in the name.
Beans.
It'd be good if you could actually control beans. Though.
Oh, yeah.
It's a past tense of bee.
A dead bee. A bean. That's a good film.
How are we segueing into...
Well, I would like to segue, if you will join me in this, from the ships of the ocean, as they were horses of the sea, to the horses of space, ships of space, spaceships, the Outer Wilds.
Yeah.
So Outer Wilds is on a lot of lists. It's on Alex, Tom and Chris's lists, in fact. So the burden of speaking now falls to us.
Is it on other Tom's list?
I don't know. I don't have it on this huge pad.
Despite the space.
But no, Outer Wilds.
A amazing game about exploring a solar system that is dying in about 22 minutes. And you... when it does die, or you die much before that because you fucked up, as you often will, you wake up again at the start of the cycle and you get to do it all again. And there's almost no real progress beyond just what you learn. In fact, there is no progress beyond what you learn. It's just almost all of it is in your own head. Some of it gets recorded in your ship's computer. And it's just amazing that works at all, that you can make a whole game of that. Like, it probably took me 20, maybe 25 hours to sort of milk it for all its secrets and get to the, you can finish it. And I did. And along the way, I answered every mystery that the game presents to you. There was only one question mark on my whole info web of my ship's computer, and that's there's a moon of a certain planet that's got a fucking volcano on it, and you can land there, and there is something there to see, but I've never seen it. And you've got to do that to scrub that off your ledger. But I ended it having discovered everything that the game sort of wanted me to discover, and having answered. It raises all these questions. It's almost you're from this race of four-eyed weirdos on a little moon.
Hey.
But it's almost exclusively about this other race, the Nomai, who existed many thousands of years before you, and you're discovering what they were working on and what your own race have really have a pretty limited understanding of this solar system and its history. And they've sent out astronauts before you, but those are stranded on various planets, and they're sort of nice little touchstones to figure out, just to get a sort of overview of where you can go and where you might want to go. You can find these stranded astronauts and talk to them. But really, even they don't know 1% of what has happened here, and most of the game is you discovering the history of the Nomai and what they were doing. And they are a race of big fucking nerds.
Hey!
Fucking squares in this game everywhere.
Hey!
Just gotta think of something to pick now.
Oh, I'm not here.
Actually, the Nomai are not here. So. There's a lot of absentees in this game.
Hey!
Yes, full set.
This is some huge anglerfish.
I forget what I was saying about them now.
Big nerds.
Yes, and so they're engineers. They are incredible at engineering, and all the things you discover about them is just, holy fuck, you build this, and then you build this, and you were trying to build this, and then you almost built that, but it went horribly wrong for reasons that I don't know initially. And it's definitely a masterpiece in non-linear storytelling. But even better, I was talking to someone about this recently. Her story is also, sort of another big step forward in non-linear storytelling. But there are some people for whom her story just didn't work because they just searched for the right thing in the first three searches, and they hit a major revelation. And after that, it's all a bit of a downer. I've never heard of anybody having that experience with Outer Worlds. I know some people who didn't get far enough with it, and they got stuck on something. There is a certain amount of manual control you need to get to grips with to get to some places, and some things are time sensitive, and so if you're struggling with controls in general, it can be hard to get to the heart of the game. And the final thing you have to do in the game is manually taxing. It's difficult to perform in many ways, but you can get to sort of 90% of it. And whatever order you discover it in, it's fascinating. It's so, like, it just, for me at least, it was delivering question after question and answering them, and every answer would raise more questions, and there is so much to it, because the timeline of it is, stretches thousands of years, and just figuring out why were they doing this at that point, and then they stopped doing that and they started doing this, and they were really, really ready for this one eventuality, but if that happened, why didn't the thing they were trying work, and if it didn't happen, why aren't they still here? And all these conditionals of like trying to figure out how we got to this state where all this stuff has already happened, but they're all gone, they're all dead, and what they were planning didn't come to fruition, but something did, and they've left all these things behind, and there's just all these like fascinating clues. And the reason it's in my Game of the Year list is discovering a non-linear story often has these moments of revelation where you're like, oh god, this clicks into place. And those always feel the sweeter for the fact that you triggered them. You, by learning this, you have just realised, oh, this connects to this. And that's so different to like a movie that's just where the twist is presented to you. And you might guess the twist like a little bit before you're supposed to guess the twist, and that feels good. But this is like that writ large is like, the game has no idea where I am and what I know and where my gaps in my knowledge are. And when I piece these puzzle pieces together, that's incredible. And I was just, I've been trying to figure out a spoiler-free way to describe the moment I had. But just looking at something in space and thinking, that doesn't actually match what I thought the rules were of this thing. And then realising, unless, oh my god! Like, 3 of my biggest questions about the whole game's history just all clicked into place, like one after the other, like a chain reaction. Like, and that means, so the thing I've been seeing all along is this. That explains this. That explains this. It all fits together. That's just so satisfying and just amazing that just happened. That it's not even like an event that happens in the game that you can interpret multiple different ways. It was just incredibly ordinary scene that I'd seen many, many times before, and this time I had the one thought that would lead me to this revelation. I think
I was just going to say that's on my list of games to try again with over Christmas. It's on there with Life is Strange 2 actually, because I played the alpha version that they had out, like the ancient build that I think was from the IGF millions of years ago at this point. And so I played that several times over, like, while waiting for the game to come out. And then I bought it when it turned up, and I didn't even get into the spaceship. I hated the controls of doing that practice flight that you do so much that I was just like, I am not in the mood for this right now. I don't need to play it for work, so I'm just going to come back to it when I'm in a different mood and see if it clicks. And like, Life is Strange 2 is a very different thing, where I played the first episode for a work review, and then thought, no, I'm going to wait until the whole thing's out and I've got a minute to actually sit and play it properly. But I definitely want to sink my teeth into it, but something about the controls just didn't work for me, and in a quite horrible, I can't be in the world if this is how I have to interact with it way.
It'd be worth, if you do get to the spaceship, just worth seeing how it feels from that perspective, because when you're doing the model thing, you're doing it in third person, which is, I think it's a step harder than what you actually end up doing.
Okay.
I was going to say, I think this is an absolutely extraordinary game, and that goes quite a long way. Like, maybe I'll leave with this. I legitimately think this might be one of the best games ever made. Like, it's not like, spoilers for what my top of the year is going to be, but like, genuinely, I think it's an absolutely extraordinary piece of design. Like, and I agree with some Nichols about the controls and things, but ultimately, like, one of the reasons it works as well as it does is it is not just that it's a successfully told non-linear piece of storytelling. It is because it is a story about mechanics. Both the inventions of the Nomai and trying to unpick a piece of technology that was in the process of being created, and the story of why, but also the fact that the solar system, I know you've written about this, Alex, the solar system that the game takes place in is itself a mechanical object, right? From a game point of view, it's partly simulated. Part of some of the environmental factors that you're negotiating, the puzzles you're solving, the barriers you're overcoming, are strictly sort of simulationist in their kind of approach to how they're designed. And the whole thing is this piece of clockwork that kind of ticks towards its inevitable end and then restarts. And all of these things taken together are like, I don't know how you better them in a certain way, because, or without repeating them. You could probably polish them or do different remixes of them, but in terms of just creating an experience, it's kind of unlike anything else. It solves all the problems that things like Her Story have, or that other attempts to do non-linear narrative, traditional narrative in games have, because games are really good at telling stories about systems that often struggle to tell stories about people, or about, particular moments of personality or drama and things like that. Like Her Story, I think, is a successful example of this. And I think it's an obvious counterpoint to Outer Wilds in some ways, because they're both information games. They're both games where you progress at the speed of your own understanding, and where the biggest moments of drama, as you pointed out, Tom, are where something changes in your brain, and it wasn't predetermined by the developers when that would take place. It's when your understanding shifts and the immense satisfaction that comes from that. The huge advantage that Outer Wilds gives itself is, as I say, it's ultimately a story about the attempt to understand how the universe works and how you can interact with it, which is the story of every person playing a game ever, basically. Like, what are the rules of this place? What do I understand about the rules of this place? How do each of these game mechanics work? And they're so tightly entwined, what the story is and what the mechanics are, that you discover them both organically at the same time, basically. So it is basically without dissonance in that sense. And I appreciate...
Don't drink. Regurgitate.
Everyone can see, right? And that's like, it's such an extraordinary thing. And the great thing about that is it works on so many levels. It's an advantage because it fits what games are good at. They're, making drama. And there are, that's not to say that it's a dry story. Like, there are characters in it and there are stakes for these characters and things you're happy and sad to see them succeed or fail at. But it naturally fits what games are good at. It also succeeds because it's non-verbal in storytelling a lot of the time. You can look at what's happening to a planetoid or to a part space and derive some dramatic impact just from either the visual aspect of it or something so few games manage to achieve, some actual emotional impact from the way mechanic works. Like, oh shit, this thing happened to this character because of the way this quirk of space physics, made up for the purposes of this game, space physics function. Like, that is an extraordinary achievement for games, I think. I think it's enormous. Like, I think this would be an amazing game for, kids who are old enough to control it, to encounter, because there's nothing in it that is, there's no objectionable content in it, basically. Some of it's a little bit scary. It does have some ocean willies for you to discover.
For sure. I know several adults who cannot progress in this game because of the ocean or space willies.
Yeah, cosmic willies. But like, it's got like, it feels weirdly to me like the kind of dream games you project when you're a kid, where like there is this sort of I was thinking about this earlier before we recorded because I wanted to try and articulate how much I think this game is fucking brilliant. Is like, it feels somewhere between like an incredible, strange sort of movie for kids in a way, like these cartoon aliens that sort of have these sort of strange lives and these weird vistas and strange planets that don't make any logical sense but would stick in your mind forever. Like, just an incredible movie, but also being completely non-linear. Like, not just an overture at non-linearity or of choice, but literally completely non-linear.
Yeah.
So anyone who makes their way organically through that whole game, and I'm very glad that, and I would recommend this to anyone who plays it, if you get stuck, ask a friend who's finished it. Like, seriously, if you get stuck, DM me on Discord if you don't know anyone else who's finished it. Because, I DM'd you when I was stuck. And that was the way I got help. Because Googling things or looking on a wiki is how you spoil it for yourself. It's supposed to be, you get your own progress through it. Because you can get stuck. I certainly did.
I gave a tiered series of clues where here's the least spoilery version, and if you're still struggling, here's the next more spoilery version.
Right, exactly. But like, I genuinely don't think, I think there are a few better experiences literally in this medium than getting through that on your own Steam.
Yeah.
Like,
there were definitely a couple of things where like I was on the right track, but I needed to Google it to check that, and it turned out I was, so it was fine. But...
And it's like, it's not a spoiler, but like the game at the end asks you to demonstrate your understanding of a lot of different mechanics in order to end it. Like, if you're going to get the ending, you've got to demonstrate how to tie it all together. And that I love, because it's like, bring this all, bring it home. Basically, do it all at once. You've been living with this 20-minute limit, which is such a great idea because it means that you don't have that anxiety about finishing it. You know that everything's going to get reset, so you just do what you can do. And that in a stroke eliminates what would be a devastating big town problem for this game. And then, when it comes down to it, you're going to be asked to demonstrate all your understanding at once. And suddenly it's like an adventure. Like you go on this adventure armed with all of this knowledge about how the universe works, in a position of relative mastery, if you can pull it off. And it's one of these it's like, we've talked so many times on this podcast about how difficult it would be to make a heist game feel right. I think the end of Outer Wilds, obviously the theme is totally different, but it feels like a good heist game would feel.
Yeah.
Where you have all the pieces and you just need to do them and you know the timing. Like 15 minutes in, this needs to happen. And then you can, it gives you this opportunity to put your weight against the kind of the machinery of the universe that you've been dealing with and learning about, and then push it out of order and end it. And that is just a fucking, that's not just spoilery, it's just a feeling. That's not literally what happens, it's just the feeling of what happens. It's a legitimately fucking extraordinary game. I love it to bits.
My friend Nels pointed out something I hadn't thought about, which is he was playing it at home and then he went to a friend's house and wanted to just resume. And of course, he could just play the game, and he's where he left off. Your save is in your mind. All the progress you've made is still in your brain, so you can just carry on where you left off.
Load it up on a new save and finish it the first time. Because,
there's a couple of things at the end that do track some stuff you're doing, and it'll be reflected in the end. So.
I do want to give a coda to the thing I just said, because I appreciate this is probably the most glowing I've ever been about anything. Because I do think it's extraordinary. I met several of the developers at Wilds at the Golden Joystick Awards this year, and ended up hanging out with them, and it was great to meet them and to hang out with them.
And to receive the huge amount of money you did from them.
No, because initially, initially I was very sober. So initially, and I want to say the most humble people in the world, and apparently a lot of the things I kept, having this I loved how you handled this, and I thought this was extremely clever. And I think this is absolute humility. But the answer to all of those questions was, this was an accident. Or nothing like this was the case until right in the last minute. Or, we kind of actually just rearranged the entire game and we were amazed it worked. And we're sorry. And I think a lot of that was humility, and I completely understand and respect that. However, there's a chance that it was also just the product of a kind of random process.
It was so much of it was there 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Even long before the IGF build. So I played it in the IGF 3 or 4 years ago, and thought it was amazing then. But then there's one of the first trailers they released for it. I tweeted about it a while back. And it's incredible how much of it is already there. Almost every planet, I think, is there and has the same concept. And another thing that I think is to the Outer Wilds credit is anytime you see a game bragging about procedurally generated planets, is every planet unique. If you play the Outer Wilds, you see what unique really means. If you want to see every planet unique, that is what the Outer Wilds showcases, and it pretty much showcases why you can't procedurally generate that kind of uniqueness. The reason the planets are meaningfully different to each other is a very human reason. It's something that all of the things that are unique about this planet are things that I care about and that make it different in the way I interact with it and the way I feel about it, the way it looks, and when you're just sort of changing the cosmetics of a planet, that can be amazing in itself, but it's not the same thing as it's the reason that is not content. When you just make planets that look different, it's not content. When you handcraft, everyone has his own concept, everyone has their own rules of physics almost. And those, how many is there? 6 or something? It's not very many. And that's 25 hours of just absolutely engrossing, fascinating.
I was going to say,
it's on your list.
Yes. I was just, I agree with everything you both said. Just to add the mood of it. It can, if you haven't seen screenshots of it and listened to what you were saying, it might you might fear it was a kind of cold, sort of calculating game about, but actually the planet that you base that you originate from is this kind of down homely kind of warm place with trees and these kind of...
It's even called Timberhearth.
Yeah,
warm and
Timberhearth,
trees.
Yeah. And
One
it's
of the
like the
first
character...
things you can do is roast marshmallows, isn't it?
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Actually.
So it's
Punchy as
actually
shit.
this really kind of, and that's a place where, like, I'm sure, like, there have been points where you've been playing where you've just stuck around there for a bit longer because the stuff out was really quite demanding, and like this, I just need a bit of time.
And sometimes the thing you just did took you 17 minutes, and you're like, well, in the remaining 4 minutes, so I'm not going to get anything else done, so I'll roast a marshmallow.
But then you go out to these other planets, and as you were saying, that they are markedly different with each other, and they all come with their very specific sort of moods, very specific settings. Like visually, they are all really, if you see a screenshot, you know where it's been taken. Like you just learn these places, and it doesn't really matter where it's of. Like you can identify it, and like the music really complements all that. There's a particular musical motif that is through the entire that's struck through the game, that's played by characters that you'll go and meet, and these different strands of music that they play come together into one theme. Like holy shit.
Yeah. Like, and it's also got, weirdly, some of the most poignant experiences of, like, failing in games. That's the last thing I wanted to dwell on, like, because your ship can break apart. You can end up adrift in space, and obviously the failure condition, things are going to go wrong and you're going to die for 22 minutes regardless. But you can die in, like, a billion different ways otherwise, in the cold bleakness of space. And there is something weirdly affecting about it, particularly when you realise, like, I fucked this run, and it's not over in a sort of, I'm back to the quick save. It's like, this run ended when I kind of slightly beefed this particular weird thing I was trying to do, and now I'm drifting in space, and I'm sort of inexorably drifting towards the sun. And the very sort of specific feeling of like, well, just, alright, bye. And then you're gone, and then it starts again. Like, it's good. It's like, it's basically that one scene in Groundhog Day where Bill Murray drives off a cliff, but until in space, and eventually things get better. No Andy McDowell.
Another thing from my friend Nels, who was watching, there's a planet where like the crust is collapsing, it's falling into the centre, and you go underneath it and you can explore, there's all kinds of things underneath the crust, and he's underneath it and he saw a chunk falling past him, and on that chunk was his spaceship. Shit. I did sort of need that.
We're back now, we've all been to the toilet. Incredible.
You haven't.
I didn't. I wanted to show some solidarity with those who had.
Thanks, Brian.
That's right, man. I hope you had a great time. And it's time for the good times to keep on rolling as we segue from a game about... so I've done the segue. I did the segue already, then everyone's like, I need to go to the toilet.
Sorry.
So, whatever.
Why don't you pick different words and see if I get it this time?
Okay, fine. Alright, so we're going from a game about exploring a solar system and trying to uncover the mystery of the ancients who resided there, while also piecing together a sort of a format of information that we can comprehend from the environment and inference of how different systems interact with one another. That's Outer Wilds. A game that fits also that description is...
Mario. James
Super
Bond.
Mario Galaxy 2.
Mario vs. Rabbids.
Yes, exactly. Telling lie. No, it's Heaven's Vault, isn't it?
Yes.
Heaven's Vault. Pip?
Yeah. So, Heaven's Vault is a sort of language and archaeology detective game. Does that ring true for everybody?
Yeah,
I guess.
I thought it was about space and information.
That's what
You
Chris would
stop
have you
it.
believe. I think that's the thing, is because when you said space and information, those are the two things I absolutely don't think about really in that game. Like, you do travel between like planets and stuff, but it doesn't feel like space travel in the way that a lot of other games do it. It feels
It's very weird,
yeah.
Yeah.
And
The frightened horse of the sky.
the big idea of the sky.
Big idea of the sky.
I think that's one of the translations, actually. It's very tricky. What does this mean? It seems to be on a boat context, but something of the sky, big something.
And also, like, and this isn't to take issue with what you were saying, it's more just like a personal
Please
feeling.
do.
Is you can edit that like eye roll out maybe. That look really unreasonable.
We don't have the budget for that. The camera just sees what it sees. This is very verite,
Oh, wow, okay.
It's just capturing this moment in time and quilts.
I've forgotten what I was saying. It's fine.
Heaven's fault.
Oh, so the reason the information slide didn't ring true exactly, or didn't prompt that memory, was because the information that you're seeking is particularly to do with people and to do with archaeology and to do with this sort of sense of this main character who is actually a lot better at piecing together people from thousands of years ago than she is interacting with the people around her now. And so she, there's this sort of strange loneliness and connection at the same time that to me feels very specific to the humanities and to something a lot more fungible than pure information. What?
It's a good word.
It's a fucking good word.
Yeah. I think you cracked out the best word of this podcast.
It's not big Heidi.
Certainly not.
No.
Could call it horse fungible.
Fungible asset.
Wow. Tom, if you need company names.
Just name my company.
But yeah, so essentially you go around different locations and different sort of space rivers, exploring ruins or exploring areas and collecting lots of different scraps of text and artifacts and things with stuff written on it.
That's the word for a discarded script.
Nice. And through that, through contextual clues and through, trying to decipher the grammar of the language, because it does have a grammar, you start picking up that means something's in the past tense. That means, this thing is to do with people, or this thing is to do with this other, this is a multiple of something, or this is the symbol that actually means not at the front of the word. And so you start being able to get a better handle on what the text is. And then actually it in common with Outer Wilds,
Yep.
when you reach the end, you can actually restart the journey, and it keeps all of the words that you knew for certain. So if you had put them in multiple contexts and they made sense, the game treats that as you definitely have the correct translation. It adds it to your in-game dictionary, and so you can go through progressive loops, doing slightly different things, or exploring things in a slightly different order, but it does it generates slightly different snippets of text. Not always, but I definitely, from the first playthrough to the second playthrough had a lot more complex structures of text, and so I was able to get more out of it. I think I've done a few loops now, and so I booted it up the other day just to have a tinker around, and I'm the amount that I am learning, the rate at which I'm learning new words has really slowed down, and now I'm at the kind of the trickle point, so there's definitely a cadence with that, but I'm still finding stuff to do in it. So
yeah, because the game throws at you a constant stream of little artifacts and inscriptions. Basically, every time you find anything, doesn't really matter what it is. As soon as your character says, "Oh, there's an inscription," that's when there's going to be some language game stuff, and that's the really fun part. And so, because a lot of those are fairly, or it's not plot crucial what is on the item or what the item is. Sometimes they're very themed to the location, but there's a lot that you just find in general, and just I found a thing. And even when someone gives you something, it can be a random thing. And so on New Game Plus, that it can just switch in new ones of those that use words you don't know yet. But so once you know 95% of the words that you're encountering, and you're given a new thing, and if you know all the words, does it just sort of autocomplete, or do you still have to drag the...
So I think it depends on the artifact, and it's been a while since I played it properly. This was only a sort of dropping in to check a few things the other day. And I remember some of them did autocomplete some of the text, but I think one of the ways that the puzzles of this text work essentially is it shows you the script, or the string of symbols, but it, in common with other like ancient languages, earth languages, they don't have spaces, and so part of the puzzle is actually determining where a word ends, or if actually that word is part of a different construction and things like that. And so so it doesn't like, I think the only ones it auto completes are more sort of the plot ones, I guess. If you know all of the words, it's just going to whack them in there, or things like that.
There's so much with that. Like, it doesn't sound like there would be a lot of ambiguity in where would go. Like, there'd be a hard and fast answer to that, but there isn't, because of the way the words are constructed from symbols that relate to their meaning, and especially stuff around knowledge and holiness and temples and emperors and all these things that are super common in an ancient society. So many of them involve, like, the symbol for people, the symbol for wisdom, the symbol for this, but just in different orders. And this of that, dot this means something different to this dot that of this.
Some of it is more pictogram based, so you could take an educated guess at what water is, or what like, you know, crops, or, you know, that kind of thing is. And it helps you out a bit with like the game is quite good at pointing out if the imperial seal is on there, so you can take a guess that like Empress or something is going to be in there. I think I remember there was one frustration that I had, which was that I, at some point, because I went full nerd on this, and so I started breaking down the syntax and like trying to figure out the actual rules for the language. So I got to the point where I could actually decipher things the game wouldn't let me decipher, because you can only drag and drop from the vocabulary that you have. And I'm like, no, I know what that says. It just won't let me say it.
I think it's like, if you get to the point where like you drag all the right symbols in, and the only word remaining that you don't know is, there's just one word, then it'll say, okay, then this must be this or something. But if there's two of them, it won't do that, even when you're just like, I know every symbol in this and it makes absolute sense with everything else, but there's no way for me to just say that to you.
Yeah, because the way that you kind of orient yourself with new words is that once you've decided where the spaces will be in that sentence, it breaks them down, and you can like click on the one that is a symbol that you don't actually know, or the word that you don't know, and it shows you stuff that looks like it or that uses some of the same symbols, so that you can say, oh, okay, I think that one, it's kind of like this in some regard, and then I'll take something from this. So, you know, if this is a negative thing, and if this is to do with fields, maybe it's like, oh, you know, famine or so. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'd be able to maybe try and start making those connections. But if you don't have those other words, it won't let you know the syntax, or it won't let you know those things. But I got text hungry. I was just like, I went round talking to everybody, and every time they didn't have like text, it was just like, well, you're useless to me. And I was kind of at that point playing as the crotchety kind of archaeologist. I was just like, these people, what are they for if they're not going to like tell me about daggers? And
I love the image of like a local child offering you flowers, like you slap it out of a hand. Where's the fucking inscription?
But yeah, and yeah, it's just, I really love the aesthetic as well. I know a lot of people bounced off that, but I actually really liked it.
It's very weird. Like, you don't see people's feet; their legs fade out, and there's a sort of very, I don't know if stop motion is the right word. A very keyframes version of animation.
Between
I did find, so there's a lot I didn't like about the presentation, but it did have a really particular atmosphere to it. It's very like chill. It's got this very relaxed atmosphere, even as you're going. You're actually in quite a lot of danger. It just sort of has this feel of like, I'm just riding a river to the next planet, and then we'll just show up and have a conversation along the way. And
how did you get on with your robot?
It's interesting because I've played a few loops.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I've been nice and a complete dick to my robot. I think I tried to sell it at one point. So, yeah, I don't know. I actually liked playing the main character as more of a kind of standoffish, like quite prickly person.
Pushes you towards a level.
Yeah, you get, this is one of the most prickly protagonists within games where you get to choose what you say.
Yeah.
You do get options, and you can be nicer but she definitely has.
It's
really
within
feels like she's not. And people don't like you either. Like even people you've known your whole life are just really like pissed off with you.
But yeah, I think the only thing that I really didn't get on with was there were a lot of problems with the interspace travel, certainly at first, and I know that they've made a bunch of changes, and like you can now just hand over steering entirely to the robot, and that does mean that you don't run up against these random ruins by the side of these space rivers, so you can't pick up those random artifacts from there. But I think if you're just in that sort of frame of mind of, I just want to get through this, you can 100% just not deal with
interesting.
those space rivers if you don't fancy them. So, but yeah, I think I really love it, and it's like nothing else I've ever really played.
Has there been another translation game of that kind of depth?
There's a game called Senia, which I played after I played this, and it's obtuse, and it is awkward, and it sort of doesn't like you, so I had to, it requires a lot of you, it requires you wanting to play it, basically, but that was really good, because essentially you find this, like, almost like a tablet or a calculator or something, and you can use the symbols and you put things in and it responds, and so you're sort of trying to like learn what these things are by trying to talk to it, and like it's just quite hard to figure out the interface, essentially. So I think I looked a couple of things up on the Steam discussions, and I managed to get quite far through it, but I got stuck in a loop at one point, and I think that was just a finicky kind of syntax thing, because then I looked up what was happening there, and I think I was really close to an ending, and so it was like, oh, okay, but I think that was the point where it became frustrating, because it was like, but I got the spirit of the thing, or like in how I understood the syntax, this should have worked. But anyway, but that one was really interesting. It's very very lo-fi, but I really liked it. So if you like language puzzles, check that one.
I created a fictional language this year for a game.
Yeah.
For
French.
No.
What?
I don't know where I was going with that. It sounds like a sick verb.
Just a French person to say, hey!
Le hey!
Good. Where you'll be tried. Right, thanks. Oh, baby, when you dance like that.
It was a war crime. No? Oh, we've moved on.
There's an attention spanner there, but
a woman go mad. So be mine and keep on watching the signs of my body. Disco Elysium. It's on many lists this year.
Yep.
4 of them, in fact.
Good Lord.
In fact, everyone here except Pip.
I didn't like it.
Fuck that game.
I didn't want to spend any more time with those people.
Let's talk about Disco Elysium. It swept the floor at Big Jeff's Jefforama.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, he's there. He's got Disco Elysium. He's grinding it into a money floor.
It's a legitimate and exciting awards show, and they deserve every moment of their success.
Board. Swept the board.
What?
Surely.
Yeah, he swept the board.
Is that what did I say?
Swept the floor.
Yeah. You can sweep the floor with someone, and that means like owning them.
That does mean that, yeah.
So look, Big Jeff owns.
I don't know what sweeping the board means, like metaphorically. What is that?
Please release me from
Is
this
it like
room.
the boardroom
Across
and
the
you just
board.
polish?
Chris, across all of them boards.
Okay,
just
yeah,
Disco.
it's a sweep. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a good game.
It's a good game. They did well. I'm happy for them. All right,
I feel like
can we
that
land
is-
this?
The primary win there is the award show, like getting some legitimacy. It's sort of because I don't
Hell
really
yeah.
care what Jeff Keighley thinks exactly, but when an award show says, "Oh, Disco Elysium's like one of our," we're giving 3 awards to this, I think, "Oh, okay, you actually know what you're talking about."
You're not getting a Keeley card this year.
I managed to both insult and compliment Jeff Keighley's thing.
It's easy to do both. Yes, let's talk about Disco Elysium, because it did factor into a lot of the lists, and this segue's gone rogue in ways I can't contain.
I was really relieved by it because
you've been hyping it for a long time.
Yeah, so I had a lot riding on this motherfucker.
You got that sunk cost.
What were you so into? Like, what was
it? Was it that grabbed me at the time?
Well, yeah, like, because if you were hyping something before it was out, like, presumably there was something about the core concept, or that you'd
So the start of the game, the first half of the game has been pretty much locked down, more or less. Like, I'm sure there are strands to it that have been introduced or tweaked, but fundamentally, the opening and the bar area where you start and that bit of town, like, there's several hours of play that, you know, are more or less indistinguishable. You know, I'm sure there's loads of changes, but the mood and the voice and the what you do and the way that its systems interact, and, you know, that was all set.
So you played at like a preview event or something?
Yeah, what happened? I can't remember. Oh, that's right. It was I wrote a preview that when they announced. And
did you get to make your own character for that?
It had presets. Yeah, I can't remember what I decided to play, but like that, you know. So, you know, that opening with you waking up just wearing underpants with the worst hangover of all time, but that being prefaced with you, sort of your deepest psyche, kind of sort of writhing about in a soup of kind of existence, and kind of, you know, being horrified by the reality of, you know, your character's self, was all there, and like, it was fucking striking, and, you know, and that sort of stays true for now.
Just your brain talking to you is pretty unusual, and then the fact that how granular that is, like every part of your brain that's talking to you is also a skill you can put points into, and the just kind of, I don't know, the when you build a character in an RPG, usually it's like part expression and part efficiency, and there's often sometimes a tension between those two things, but really, actually, most of them are designed so that, like, whatever you put points into, it's going to be good. Fuck, that's right. That is not... it is in airplane mode. I had an alarm. And Disco Elysium, there's no... Like, the skills don't necessarily get you anything. Like... Inland Empire and Shivers, there are so many different skills that are some kind of hunch.
Yeah.
And I thought that, that means, like, if you have that skill and you pass that check in the game, that means that you're like you had a good hunch, and that will lead you to the right path to solve the crime. Oh no! Like, most of the hunches I had from, like, Inland Empire or Shivers, which I think especially Inland Empire, are like, do not open this. Oh my god, this door! Do not open it. There's something horrible behind this door. Something terrible behind this door. Don't open it. Don't open it.
Because they sold it from the start. Like, some of them will just mess you up. Like, you put too many points into them, and you don't always want.
So, I kind of want to, like, I think there's a way of presenting this game makes it feel quite gotcha-y with its sort of, like, the way it kind of surprises you with its interpretations of the choices you've made. It is such the reason it's in my top 3, certainly, is because it's such a humane game. It is such a deep, like, it's easy to talk about it in a way that risks, I think, misselling it. Because if it's just, you've woken up with a massive hangover,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, there's a version of this.
The limbic system's talking to you. It can all sound a little too kind of abstract and granular or philosophical, which it is. But I mean, it's deeply connected to just feelings and being a good person,
being a human, and being a machine. Like, what kind of animal am I? Is the kind of, like, central kind of question of that game. Like, I'm an animal who really was about to sneeze until, like, seconds ago when I fucking got a lid on it. And maybe this device will allow that moment to have been recorded in some way.
It'll be an emoji, won't it?
No, but, like, you know, and that's what really, I think, it's almost, it redeems it, because there's enough fiction in the world that focuses on what it's like to be a drunk man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or, like, a cool drunk man, particularly. A drunk detective, even. Like, these things exist as tropes, and it fucking skirts the edge of, like, dangerous Tropeyville on the way to actually saying something about being a shittyman town.
Shittyman town.
That's my understanding.
I think when we first discussed it, you said, you raised those kind of concerns. You're like, well, maybe, this is a great game, but maybe it would be more interesting if they'd gone for a less safe, less tropey protagonist.
Yeah.
I think that's still probably the case, but I think it pulls it off, even with those caveats, And
I think it plays with them as part of it.
Yeah. I think it could, there's no real reason for it to be more experimental than it already is, given that it's experimenting in lots of other areas.
Right.
I'm really curious what happens. So there's, as you start to decide how to choose your dialogue choices and invest in your skills and how you want to sort of play this character, the game also feeds back to you and you'll get thoughts that pop into your head of like, wow, one of the ones I got was like, you seem to be very sorry about everything, and now you're starting down the sorry cop path, and there's a way to sort of like lean into that, or you can resist it. And there are various like cop archetypes you can get classified into. I'm really curious what happens if you go to the superstar cop or the rockstar cop or whatever it is, like the one where it's like all flashy and I'm amazing and stuff, because that. In principle, that runs against what the sort of what's happening in the game, and also what I feel the game wants you to understand and believe, which is that your guy's just a wreck. Like, you fucked up. You're just a horrible.
I can only imagine that plays out that you have a huge amount of self-deluded ego.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
But I want to see like how much does the game push back against it. Like, I know that my character will believe this, but do other people like deflate that?
Yeah,
I think what's great about it, and I was thinking about this in relation to Outer Wilds actually, which is like these are the two games that I think I would put on a pedestal above anything else this year.
Oh, yeah.
And they're so different in a way, because Outer Wilds is this embracing of games as putting you on an even keel, right? Like your agency is completely manifest in the world in the direct way that you want it to be. The controls already can be finicky, but it's just you and your brain versus a puzzle. And the puzzle is also a story, and that's where it's all gets skill and its sense of triumph and the stories it can tell you come from. Like your cockpit is very literally in that little spaceship or in the little spacesuit that you're navigating around. Your cockpit in Disco Elysium is 2 steps back from that, nestled in your own fucking brain, with all of the problems that your own fucking brain has. And you're trying to solve a similar kind of puzzle. It's not a space mystery, but you're trying to piece information together and, be a detective while also navigating, steering yourself around and not being a twat and combating your own prejudices and instincts and debates and stuff. And they, for me at least, they sit next to each other really in a very complementary way of what games can do, where it's, good, like Disco Elysium is a perfect example of how good writing can have you invest in every choice you make, no matter how insignificant in traditional game mechanic terms. And Outer Wilds is a testament of how good mechanics, clever planning can have you look for meaning in even the smallest interactions with the world, which are like almost opposite things and yet kind of really complementary in how games can tell stories. Just one requires really fucking extraordinary writing, which is what Disco Elysium has.
I think where I was at with it was, in part, there's a few different components, and I'd probably phrase this imperfectly, not least because of wine, but I very much hit that game at a point where I did not have any real energy left to spend managing a man with issues in a position of relative power and negotiating his sort of, at that point, as it appeared to me in the game, I have no idea how this progresses, but a lot self-inflicted, and it was just kind of like, do you know what, there are so many other things I could do with this emotional capital right now, and you are not anywhere on that list.
You do have to baby him, and he is in a position of privilege and power. But I think
that is a conflict that is pointed out by the game as well.
Okay.
It's like...
Yeah, I think for me that became a sort of meta commentary on like how pathetic this guy is.
Yeah.
Like it was dunking on him rather than asking you to sympathise with him, really.
I think maybe I'm hoping
or a bit of both,
that
I suppose.
It's a thing that other people then get that experience from. I don't... Maybe I don't
Yeah, I can definitely see it.
That lesson more. I don't know.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting
that's not
because
to say it's a lesson game or anything. Like that's more just.
Yeah, I mean, it is partly about rehabilitating a fucking shitty man, and that is obviously a fairly boring arc, I think. But he also has other experiences in that world which are really meaningful and touching. I think
the reason I would describe it as humane is because I think it's like a film, for example, that takes an unsympathetic protagonist and shows you how they can be affected by emotions that you do relate to. So it's about drawing a bridge, because I think I completely understand the perspective of it's easier for for us to. Well, I'll say it's very easy for me to establish or to relate to the position of a slightly drunk white man in a position of relative privilege. But it's like it does a good job of drawing that back to really core kind of emotional moments like heartbreak and regret and things that you can kind of relate to, and creates these sorts of empathetic bonds both between characters and I think between you and the main character, which are like, because he is ridiculous. Like, I think even if you match him demographically, you'll very rarely match him chemically. And it's almost there to be at arm's length, and the length of that arm is TBD. But like, the idea is you have the characters at arm's length, and you have these moments where actually the emotional resonance of the story and things that are happening to them kind of successfully ping across that bit and create these moments of genuine, like, emotional connection that work really, really well, and frame the other decisions you're making and the way that character behaves in the world as either comedy or tragedy, and either as redemption or kind of further damnation. I'm running out of steam with this entire fucking point, but that, that, like, it's about that tension, I think, between how much do I want to sympathise with this character versus how much do I not, how much is universally human versus how much is specific person's fuck up. And the fact that we're even talking about in those terms, I think, is an extraordinary achievement for RPG.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is a comedy about what a fuck up this guy is.
Yeah.
And you're sort of laughing at him more than laughing with him for some time. And then when he does have a moment of empathy within that it can be disarming. It's like the time I sort of ran out of time and options to find a place to stay for the night, and the only place I knew was the place I'd stayed last night, but I owed them a huge amount of money, and I just had to ask someone for money. I knew someone with a load of money, we're friends, and all I've got to do is ask them for money, but that is an incredibly ambitious skill check. You have to, I can't remember what skill it is now, but maybe a volition. I think it's volition, which is like your willpower to do something against your instincts. And it's just because you're ashamed. It's not even guilt. It's not that you feel bad about taking money from this person. She's fabulously rich. You can easily afford it. It's just your own pride and just trying to fight that. And that was a sort of unexpected moment of, I was mostly laughing at this guy, and then at that moment, I'm like, yeah, I do kind of feel for him.
I think I just don't want it to sound like I've, like, gone for a really superficial, like, knee-jerk response. It's like, I'm really glad that this stuff has, like, resonated or has connected, or that even that it's just capable of doing something more interesting with that subject matter. It's just that I just didn't have anything left to give on that.
No, that makes total sense. I mean, the whole, white boozy cop with some unhappy love affair in his past. That's not a cliche that needed.
And one shoe in my play. Yeah, it was like.
It didn't really need revisiting, but like I think it does get through that, and doesn't do interesting things with that. But I can understand why people would encounter that and just be like, no, thank you.
I remember that.
I've spent an hour in your company. Now I shall go and play Beyond Blue. Good day.
That was definitely heavier on my mind early on in that, like, and when I first heard about the game, and I thought, it's a weird decision to just make it like a white male policeman. Like, given everything else that the game is trying to do that's so brave and interesting, that felt incongruous.
But then you get saturated in that world, and there's so many kind of subtle complexities to it, right?
Yeah.
It becomes a way
the world
to
questions you. If you, I think that's his kind of point, is that I don't think you could have, I don't think it would do what it's striking out to do if you weren't that white, straight male cop. Like, the world questions your existence throughout it.
Yeah, and it's about agency.
Yeah.
Literally the things you choose to value in your own brain in this case.
And they tell you straight up, like, hey, don't worry about doing like weird shit that people might judge you for because you're a policeman and people will give you a load of leeway for it. Which is kind of explaining, I guess, their decision there, which is like, if we put you in this position, it's can make sense that you get to behave like a complete, I mean, you don't know you literally don't understand reality. You haven't just lost the memory of the last week. You don't understand how the world works or how like reality functions. And they're basically telling you it's okay to ask those kinds of questions and act like a complete weirdo because you're a cop, so people aren't going to call you on it.
But yeah, the world itself is fascinating, interesting, like really specific as well. Like, it's made by a group of developers, or many of the developers and the founding developers come from a culture that is actually quite exotic to us, like me, a British kind of, like Estonian, and that brings a perspective to this game, which I think is totally fascinating as well. It's like it's not purely like, for me, I find the character fascinating, but also the decisions behind the art style and the setting of a dissolute city,
which languages are used.
The languages, yeah. That's everything is very deliberate in this game. Like, everything has lots of meanings. Like, everything has been fully thought through. This is a game which was based on a long-running kind of RPG by its makers, and the novel was written several years ago. So it has really been thought through. This is not, we've got to do some world building, for the game. This is like, we've got a world and let's tell a story within it, and like that's, that really feels special.
That exhausts our list of personal picks for the year. Do we want to quickly rattle through some honourable mentions before we sign off? Because there are a few games. Marty?
Sure.
Your smile will be noted by the camera.
Yes, now I have to mention Noita. It's a good game. There you go.
Excellent. We're going to go for like name of game plus a sentence, I think, for these.
When you're covered in blood, you do more critical hits in Noita.
It's true. It's the best Spelunky of the last year.
Oh.
You could probably say last 3 years.
That was the exact visual language of a man thinking that the shower is hot and then realising that it is cold.
Cold shower again.
No, I mean of a take. Best Spelunky of the last year.
I was going to say Unity of Command 2, which I played more of, and continuing the sentence, I'm continuing to enjoy like just the puzzle. It's a puzzle game. It's like it's really, really intricate kind of puzzle game, but with wearing very complicated trousers.
Clockwork trousers.
Also on the list, Teamfight Tactics.
Teamfight Tactics, yes. Sorry,
Is that the sentence?
More. I feel kind of not exactly annoyed about this, but it's. I feel like it has a lot of the shortcomings that I hate in Hearthstone, and yet here I am every fucking day playing that game.
I feel like we've had a consistently good time playing it. However,
if people listen to your voice on there, your absolute fury at everybody picking characters you wanted.
Well, no. The roundel, like everyone runs in a circle, and I pick last because I'm leading. Like a system. Yes, it's frustrating for me, the person in the lead. This is like the fucking Disco Elysium one. Like at this point, like I accept that I'm going to be left with trash.
I really like it because they are currently pouring a lot of time into getting the updates and all of that stuff. So it seems to be sort of moving on at a feral clip. But I have started to see the reason it wasn't on my Game of the Year things is I've really started to see that drop off after people have mastered a patch, and when you're like, oh well, this is the viable combos or the more reliable ones, and then so it settles, and then you wait for the new patch, and then it's.
I think the magic point for games, like, the great thing about auto chess, because this has also been the year of auto chess, it's worth noting, like, is it's like meta weather. It's like, it's very sort of, elementally this time of year. Do you know what I mean?
Chris, I'm really not following you. And I'm not trying to troll you, I don't know what you mean.
Right. What I mean is you experience the weather collectively, right? Like, and in games like this, you're kind of confronted with a meta that you navigate together with your friends. The idea is that it's not solved. It's just sort of a common condition that you're all sort of encountering at once. And so being
we're
all
all wearing sun hats.
I guess. Being on chat together, playing Teamfight Tactics is the experience of all of you trying to negotiate the same sort of design space and trying to make optimal recruitment and sort of planning strategic decisions together, faced with a kind of common strategic situation, set of opportunities, common store, common set of opponents, rotating in and out. The thing that they're doing at Teamfight Tactics, where they're also rotating this seasonally, and therefore, I didn't express this particularly well, but like currently we're all thinking about elements and what element is the board and how does that relate to future decisions, and does Kiana become way more valuable in a mountain board?
Which she does.
Which she does. Like, all of these different things. That is, the fun of that is not solving it as an individual. The fun of it is entering it with a group of people. And
I really like playing it with you.
Thank you. And navigating it together. And that's why I describe it as weather, like meta weather. It's a common set of environmental conditions that determine how we collectively experience this strategic sandbox and navigate it. And as soon as that becomes solved and a group of players sort of have it down, that ceases to be interesting. It's the journey, not, as they say,
that's the climb.
The video game.
I want to mention Slay the Spire because it probably definitely would have been in my top 3, except that I think it was my game of the year last year. Slay the Spire came out in 2017. It was initial release, and then its 1.0 release was 2019. But I think it was my game of the year 2018 because that was the year that was mainly being developed where I was playing the hell out of it. I've also been playing the hell out of it this year. It's my most played game, I'm sure, by far. It's just not as interesting a choice as everything else I picked. It just continues to develop in a really good way, and just the endless appeal of finding a build that works that you've never done before. Like, oh shit, I've had this relic and I picked these cards. There's this trick I can do that I've never had before in my 1,000 runs of this.
It would not be 2019 if we didn't mention Untitled Goose Game.
Of course.
Honk. Also, also out this year, A Short Hike.
Oh yeah, that was lovely.
That was so close to being on my list, actually. I think I only didn't put it there because the other 3 felt like they did something markedly different, whereas A Short Hike is just a very well executed game, and that saying "just" is so like mealy mouthed. Right. It's wonderful, but that's why it wasn't quite the other things.
It's moving and it's sweet. And it's very short, and you just kind of play through it and have a lovely time.
Kind words.
Yeah, have you lot played?
No.
Yes. So it's very bare bones game, but not bare bones, but it's very minimal. But what happens is you use the interface to write very short letters where you put down something that's worrying you, or just how you are, or a request, or things like that, and other people can respond anonymously and just sort of give you words of encouragement. And that's the whole idea, is that you can just sort of be there for strangers or have them be there for you, and like this little postmaster dear will just pop up at your window and hand you some letters of you'll say, I was worried about this, or and you can send a little sticker with your mail, and people can just send some words of encouragement, which is, I think that's so lovely. And I don't think I saw anyone abusing it. Which kind of surprised me. I'm assuming there's at least some basic filters in there, but I think the the only letter I reported was one that made no sense. Like it just, it just read like spam. So I was just like, but the rest of them, it's so kind of humanizing. It's so kind of the same problems come up again and again. Like, I don't know what to do about this thing with my girlfriend, or, like my fiance seems to be having cold feet about the wedding, or like I'm really, really stressed about university work and I don't know what to do. Or
how in depth are the answers that people give?
So you've only got a certain amount of page space. So I think when you're sending a letter out, you've got, I can't remember how many lines, but it gives you I think maybe even just 7. I think they're slightly but you've got that amount of space to ask for help or to explain the situation or whatever, and it just gives your initial of your username rather than your name or anything. And then if you're responding, I think it might be a slightly thinner piece of paper, but you get 14 lines to offer some encouragement. And so it's things like, I've definitely sent things just sort of saying, that just sounds really tough and I'm really sorry, and I hope that things ease up, or like there was someone who was worried about their birthday, or like, about not, I think they didn't know how to handle, like they didn't know how to ask their parents for something that they wanted, or they didn't want anything but they knew that their parents wanted to make a fuss of it, so they were like, it was some kind of like, it was low level in terms of, it's the sort of thing where you'd say I'm fine if someone asked you how you were and you were worrying about it, but like clearly it was bothering them. So it's like, it just felt really nice to be able to say, that sounds really rough, and I hope that you have a nice
But I mean, it sort of tops out you empathising with people and supporting them. But have you ever encountered like problems where you're like, wow, I could reply to that, but really it needs more than 14 lines? Maybe some specificity.
Or some of them, it's just like, it feels too loaded, or it feels like something I'm absolutely not equipped to even touch.
Right, of course. Yeah.
Or even just some things that felt maybe a bit more, I wouldn't be able to empathise with properly. So you can pass, you get like a certain amount of letters and you can just cycle through them and reply to some, or you can just choose to go away and come back like another time, or not at all if you don't want to. But so and a few of the things that I've put out there, like I've had a mixture of just nice replies and supportive, kind of like almost like just supportive noises, and sometimes people just offering like full on advice. So it's like, it's a mixed bag on that front. And but they advise against, like, don't put any personal information in, don't put in your like identifiable like contact details, Twitter, those kinds of things. So they're very like that stuff is visible in the game. But sorry, I know this was supposed to be quite a short thing.
No, sorry, I was just really interested.
But so it's something that I've found myself, especially when I've been struggling with things, like I haven't actually talked about them in the game, but it has made me feel better to be there for someone else and perform that function when I've not known what to do about my own stuff. It's like, well, at least I can do this, and that's like, I can tick off a good person point, and now I go back to bed. So, so that's lovely.
Speaking of going to bed, yes, please. Let's all name our game of the year, and if you would like to, also your shame of the year, within the context, I should stress, of games. Alex?
Oh Jesus, I don't even know. I really don't know.
You've had a lot of time.
We can come back to you.
I don't really think I need time. We're going to just do a score thing, and I can just put half a point in each.
No, pick a game, Alex.
How many points have you got? 1.5? Like, what are you
Go
talking?
alphabetically.
No, but I have two choices, so half a
I
point in
see.
each.
I thought you meant like
What are the
you
two
put half
choices?
a point in 3.
It's either disco
Yeah.
or outer. It's got to be wilds, isn't it? I mean, as in, I'd say wilds if I was saying one word, right? Disco.
That's what you're agonising about right now.
I think you've just given your attention away.
Wow.
It's got to be wilds.
I'm going to go Outer Wilds.
That's Wilds from Alex. Marsh?
Disco Elysium.
Pip.
You better believe that both of mine are Pocket Camp. Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. Game of the year.
She's
shame
done
of
it
the
again.
year.
Oh yeah, Alex, we didn't get a shame from you.
Oh, a shame. I don't feel
No shame.
Sort of Red Dead Redemption. I'm not really ashamed.
Our sort of omnipresent
it's more like, fuck my peers.
Oh, Destiny 2. I feel shamed for.
Yes,
Actually, no, I feel
we've got shame
Alex
within
likes
us. Let's
that
believe
sort
in
of-
ourselves and find the shame.
Tom Francis.
Outer Wilds is my actual game of the year.
And the shame?
I guess Far Cry New Dawn.
Cool. Outer Wilds for me. And my shame, Destiny 2.
As it should be. Yeah.
Shame Bros.
Was
Yeah,
Pocket
exactly.
Camp also your shame?
And
Yeah.
Game Bros.
Yeah, we are shame and Game Bros.
Microtransactions history on my
Oh God.
on my Google purchases at this point with that thing.
And I guess that means, hang on, so it was
1,
outer
2.
disco,
Outer.
3 outers, 1 disco, and Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing,
sorry,
Pocket Camp, which means I suspect that Outer Wilds is
The winner of all the
winner.
year.
To the extent that victory means anything.
Yeah.
It
Feels a bit.
Good.
Congratulations.
Do you know what? Something this conversation has made me really aware of is that it's been a really good year for games.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot that I still haven't played and will get round to in my own sweet time. And that will be, like, a real pleasure. I don't know.
Yeah, I
I'm
remember-
looking for a nice note to end.
Definitely a few years recently, there's been like, I remember doing these Game of the Year podcasts and thinking like, there's nothing that's really like amazing, but there's some good stuff. Like, there's a lot of like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 games. And this year's no shit. There's like at least 2 10 out of 10 amazing games.
That's us done for this year of Crate and Crowbar podcast. We'll be back at some point in January. If you'd like to send us a question for the next episode of the podcast, I appreciate we didn't do a question section on this episode, but we will do so again in the future. You can email us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You can also tweet us at Crate and Crowbar and find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar, which is where you will also find a little bonus mini episode of me and my sister Becky talking about Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, which will be live by the time you watch this. Obviously, spoilers, go, all up in there. If you'd like to follow us on Patreon, not follow us on Patreon, more like support us on Patreon. Nonetheless, thanks.
Follow with your money.
Follow your wallets to Patreon.
Not only you are helping, it's the camera's liberating in a way because I can just look at people and know that the communicative impact of that is being assessed somewhere.
Send us a Patreon.
Patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. Otherwise, you may, if you must, follow us as individuals on Twitter.com.
I am rotational.
Spell it live.
ROTATIONA.
Com.
.org.
He's only gone and done it. Marsh?
.uk.
I'm at Marsh Davis, although I have now blocked nearly every single word in the human dictionary.
I don't want to hear any of it.
No, it's just pictures of cats now.
It's a big Heidi.
Big and many of
A
them.
walloping Heidi.
Walloping.
Wow. I'm Philippa Wall, which is PHILIPPAWARR.
I'm at Pentadak, PENTADACT.
And I am at C Thurston, that's CTHURSTEN.
Just by the way. How do we switch off Tom's hologram? Because
Yeah.
Which one?
this one. Because obviously he's not
returning
here.
to Canada.
Because he's in Canada.
I think he will eventually ship himself back to Canada.
Okay, right.
Do you think that he'll notice that we broke into his house?
No, it's a set.
This is
Me and
security
I
hologram.
built it yesterday.
Very convincing.
This is a security hologram in my house that I programmed to turn on when intruders come in. But I forgot to tell it to actually deter them or in any way object to their presence.
It just has opinions.
Has
Also,
a nice conversation with them.
I spent all my time making sure it agreed with me on video games and none of the time.
Are you Skyping in via this hologram?
He likes Far Cry New Dawn as much as I do. What can I say?
You just really love the hologram. It's like, you just want to live with that.
Well,
is Chris being long-suffering?
He
that
is.
the expression?
it's now short suffering. I think that's worse.
If this is a set,
Hey.
does that mean we shouldn't have gone to the loo?
Yay, legit hey! Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you for watching.
Oh, shit, yeah.